I have finished the first
One Piece
saga. Yeah, I have finished One
I
Piece
finished
in a
all
week.
of One Piece.
My God, I bet you there is somebody. Is it even actually possible to finish it in a week? Like if you genuinely sat down,
So
you
it's
didn't stop,
possible.
you didn't
So I
breathe.
believe it's possible to read all of One Piece in a week,
Okay.
depending on your reading speed.
Okay.
In terms of watching One Piece, it is physically impossible. I believe One Piece is 12 consecutive days worth of content, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, and obviously ongoing. It might even be longer than that. But I remember seeing it's about 12 or more days of continuous watch time. So the shortest amount of time would be that 12 days. I think I said weeks. It's 12
Gotcha.
days.
Okay.
So about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. So no, it is not possible.
Are you wearing a Lucky Charms hat? And why is that the
I
best
am
thing
wearing
ever?
a Lucky Charms hat. Look at that. I
Why?
got this in college. And look, I got the Loki t-shirt on. I got the Lucky Charms hat on.
No, you see, like that makes
It's
sense though. But I'm like, Lucky Charms. What is that? Today we're ranking our top 10 favorite cereal brands, starting with
honestly
Frosted Flakes.
throw the top 5 TV shows out the window. We're doing top 5 Lucky Charms marshmallows right here, right now. Number 5, the balloon. I can't even remember if there's a balloon. I know number 1's the rainbow.
In
Number
all
1 is
honesty,
obviously the rainbow.
do you actually have like a favorite cereal brand? I'm just curious.
I mean, honestly, it's probably Honey Nut Cheerios.
Like
Like, Honey
really?
Nut Cheerios. Honey Nut Cheerios, well, it's one of those things where it's not too sweet. I love Cheerios, but it's not too sweet to the point in which it's unbearable, like a lot of
Sure.
the like sugary stuff out there is. But then
Sure.
you also have like the nice Cheerio flavoredness with that like additional layer of like, this tastes like honey. Which it doesn't really. It does not taste like honey at all. Let's all admit it. It tastes like sugar.
It does.
I don't even know if they use real honey on Honey Nut Cheerios, let's be honest. Like, I know their mascot's a bee, but it's probably just high fructose corn syrup.
No, and I don't blame you. I like Honey Nut Cheerios. I'm just I never hear anybody say that, which is why I'm like, that's actually a unique answer because I never hear anybody say that. Mine's like the
I mean,
generic, I love Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It's the most
okay,
generic
see,
thing.
cinnamon toast crunch is one of those things that's, in my opinion, too sweet most of the time. Like, I can sit down and eat a whole bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios, no questions asked, no milk, no nothing, because I don't do milk with my cereal. I'm a psychopath.
Fair.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, I can't. You sit down and you eat like 2 of those fuckers, and you are like, oh, well, I'm gonna die now of diabetes. Like, I just have
I'm gonna die.
diabetes now.
This is it.
I
This is
have the
the end.
diabetes, and yeah, that's Honey Nut Cheerios, I think. I also don't eat cereal like all that often. I actually haven't eaten cereal in like years. Because I don't eat breakfast. I like, if I'm gonna go for like breakfast foods, it's gonna be breakfast for dinner. You're gonna do bacon, you're gonna do pancakes, you're gonna do scrambled eggs, you're gonna do waffles. Like, you're gonna go for it. You're gonna go for it. Like,
yeah. No, I haven't eaten breakfast in years. I actually, it's funny that I think in the past year alone, I've eaten cereal more as like a dessert or a late night snack than I have for
I feel like
breakfast.
once you reach college and beyond, cereal is no longer a breakfast item. Cereal is it is 2:00 in the morning. I've been studying for 7 hours. I've done nothing but study and homework. I'm gonna just sit down and eat some cereal. Like, that is what.
Sure.
Yeah.
But with that being said, enough of the cereal talk. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast, the only podcast in the world where your 2 favorite Nimrods talk all things nerdy. I'm one of your many co-hosts this evening, Carson, aka Juggernaut, with
Brandon, aka Parrotfish, and I don't know what other co-host you're bringing on today, but I'm curious for some surprise guests because I think it's just the 2 of us.
Well, many can mean 2. Many can mean
Oh, okay,
2.
okay. Sure.
Today
Continue with the rigmarole.
Today we are bringing on Tom Holland to talk about Spider-Man 4.
Yo! We're bringing on Tom Hiddleston, who I actually met wearing this t-shirt, funny enough. I've met Tom Hiddleston in this shirt, and he's right here in my living room.
Anyway, today we are continuing our ranking list of our 5 of our favorite projects. Today is TV shows themed. which I've always been obsessed with TV. I love TV. Probably about the same as movies. And I personally, I think I have a very good like, okay, I can accept people who look at me and go, you don't have a good taste in films. Your taste sucks. I'm sorry. My taste in television is goated, and I will fight anybody to this day.
No, my taste in television is the exact opposite. So I'm gonna give you a quick stat right here. So I use a app on my phone called TV Time. TV Time, if you haven't heard of it, you can track your watch list, but you can also track TV shows and movies that you've watched. And so now, this doesn't go back all throughout my entire history. It does include things like the Disney Channel shows that I talked about, which you might hear about, maybe a little hint. You do hear, and it's like, it is confirmed everything for the past like 4 years since I started using the app pretty much, but then like there's some gaps. But off that app, the reason I bring this up, it has clocked me having watched 8,337 episodes of TV. What that means is I have, in concurrent watch time, 6 months, 1 day, and 13 hours of TV is just that I've ranked in that. So I've watched a lot of TV. That's just to give you a hint into that. I think movies is somewhere, I can check, but movies is somewhere in the 200s.
Well, and honestly,
like 200 movies.
You look at my face and you look at my reaction, you think that like I'm going like that's insane, but honestly, the same I thought immediately after, I was like, that's not insane. I'm probably much worse off, in all honesty.
And to be fair, 1/8 of that is just One Piece. If you think about it, because One Piece is over 1,000 episodes. So an eighth of that 8,000 episodes is just One Piece.
That is true. Very true. How are you, Brandon? How are things? It's been a week. It's been
a rough week. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's been a real rough week. I'm not gonna get into details, but man, oh man, am I happy it's the weekend. I'm happy to be here recording because it gives me something to do that is happy and exciting. I am probably gonna do my taxes tomorrow. So that's Yeah, exactly. So this is something fun that we can do that isn't doing my taxes or work or anything like that, which is one of the big reasons we're doing this.
Yeah, because obviously the last thing you want to think about while doing the podcast is how the government is actively taking your money from you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Yeah, no. It's been a pretty rough week for me. You know, spring break, so I've been relaxing. I think that's the hardest thing for me ever. You know.
Just wait till you become grizzled like I have in my less than a year in the real world work experience.
No, man, but you know, my spring break was this week, so I got to do some stuff with friends. I got to hang out. I get to be with my family. Some of my grandparents are in town, so I got to hang out with them. But it's been a pretty chill week, and I'm also grateful for it, just because I feel like I haven't like stopped. I feel like I've just been constantly like going pretty much since the start of 2025, and so
trust me, I feel like that
break, a break from normality, and I can just go to work, come home, maybe sleep for a little bit, maybe play some Catan till 4 a.m. with friends on Discord, which I did do this week.
I know we talked about that. That's not the reason we're recording this on a different day than we normally do, but it doesn't help.
No, it does not help. Oh man, but that being said, I know weeks can be rough, weeks can be relaxing, but one thing stays the same. What you been watching? What you been consuming?
So in our previous cold open, I was talking about how I got completely scrubbed for other reasons, but I was talking about how I finally took notes. I have my iPad under my laptop because it's on a raised platform right now that has episode numbers. It has the show, like what I've been consuming. So we're recording this on a Saturday, which is actually really, really good because you want to know what a Saturday is. It's solo leveling day.
Absolutely.
And so I have 2 episodes of solo leveling to talk about because I have last Saturday's and this Saturday's episode of solo leveling to talk about. So last Saturday, the episode was the beginning of the Genji Island raid. So essentially There's the island. Oh, actually, before I get into this, we're going to give the preface that we're going to give once and only once. Everything we talk about during this entire episode is going to contain spoilers. Anytime we mention a property, it will be spoiled. Yes. We're not going to give spoiler warnings every single time anymore. It takes up too much time. You don't care.
Yes.
If we mention a title, we are going to spoil it. So if you hear us mention something and you haven't seen it yet, please just skip past. But with that out of the way, we started the Genji Island arc, or the Genji Island raid specifically. So there's a bunch of ants. They're very bad ants. They want to kill the humans. It's generic, but
ants. I thought you meant like ants as in like your mom's sister ant.
Yes. So this actually turns into a harem where the main character dates all of his mom's sister. It's really weird. Yeah, typical anime nonsense. But no. So we started the Genji Island raid, and so I really liked the episode because solo leveling, and again, how do I put this? So every episode lands off on a really amazing cliffhanger every single time. And I know I'm skipping to the end of the episode, but when you want to talk about hella cliffhangers, like hella cliffhangers, this episode ends with someone being decapitated and then the episode ends. Like, that is just how you just see whoop, head gone, plops on the ground, episode ends. And you're like, huh? Because essentially, and it's funny because I'm a huge Hunter x Hunter fan, and a lot of people have been complaining that the recent few episodes have copied Hunter x Hunter in a way, because Hunter x Hunter also has an arc with really powerful ants. They also have an episode on, like, an arc on an island like this. Shut up. Like, it's anime. Everyone copies from everyone. Sure. Are they taking inspiration from Hunter x Hunter? Absolutely. But they are completely different, like, general plots. Because this is literally just about, they go to this island, they raid, they kill the queen ant in like really quickly, like literally like 5 minutes, the queen ant is dead. And you're like, oh, great, it's over. Then her like really powerful son comes in, and that's where shit starts to get real. He just slays everyone. Everyone's dead. Except for the main cast, because obviously
plot armor, obviously.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's not plot. Yeah, it is plot armor, unfortunately. But that, like, basically, and I'm not gonna get like super like play-by-play detail, mainly because I want Carson to watch this because he hasn't watched this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we started off the arc. This episode, like, there's not much. I'm skipping over the previous week's episode because it was a really good episode, but it was really just the start of the raid. You had some cool action, but like, it really felt like the prelude to this week's episode, which I'm just gonna say it is the best episode of the series so far. I'm gonna rewatch that tonight. After I have dinner plans for a friend's birthday tonight. After I get back, I'm gonna sit down and watch this episode probably twice back to back.
That's
because
crazy, bro. That's crazy.
It was, the action was insane. The stakes higher than ever. The animation quality on Solo Leveling is pretty much unmatched. It is unmatched in current airing. Like, in the style that it's going for, action-wise, it is the best animated action I've seen in anime, pretty much. It is stunning. The way that the fights flow, like, in a fluid manner, where I will say in the beginning, I was a little worried because it was a very stagnant fight. It was the two characters, the main Sun Jin-woo and Biru, the ant. They were just going blow for blow, which is hype, but it was literally just like, punch, stop. Oh, wow, he's really strong. Punch, stop. Oh, wow, I didn't realize he was this strong. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way this is going to be the entire fight. Like, there's like, when I tell you, I was still hyped because, like, obviously it was still pretty hyped to watch them go blow for each other. But I was like, there's no way this is all they're going to give us. And then you can see the switch flip really quickly. When one more blow gets thrown, the animation quality goes from, oh, this is like standard Solo Leveling, really good animation, to, I'm pretty sure these people haven't slept in 3 years to make this animation. Like, you want to, like, again, we were talking about, like, punch, stop, to fluid. It's just a continuous, they haven't skipped a frame. It is just, they've animated every single frame of every single movement, it feels like, in the sense of you can feel the characters like zooming through the world. And because they're in this like volcano where they're like moving so rapidly that you can't even keep up with it. And it's really funny because one of the side characters, you like cut to his face as he's trying to track it, and his eyes are just wigging out. He's like, he's trying to follow, like watching the fight. He can't even see it. They're moving so insanely fast. But of course, you have your moments where we as the viewers, you zoom in and you freeze and slow down so you can actually like enjoy the fight. And it's not just two little things flowing around. And man, one of the other things I really appreciate, and other anime have done this, like, this isn't a spoiler, but One Piece does this sometimes, where in really intense fight scenes, they'll switch animation styles. So one of the most popular, and they didn't do this in this episode, but they have done this in previous episodes, where they'll switch from a really like color graded, the basically ray tracings on high quality animation to black and white line art. And it gives it a whole different feel. Now, again, they didn't do that exactly this episode, but they did have a degree to which it changed to that like line art style with color, which is just insane. It felt like, it feels like, oh, wow, they're just not putting as much effort in because it looks a little like weaker, but it's done in a way that emphasizes the intensity of the moment, I guess, because when characters are going to that next level of power, it's not a clean transition. You're not like, oh, I'm just going to get stronger and stronger. It's just pure rage, because one of the characters that is she is in a very bad state right now, and he knows that she doesn't have much longer to live, so he's fighting to end this as fast as possible. Sung Jin-woo is, and it is, again, the gravity of the situation is not lost on him, where up until this point, I mean, the show's called Solo Leveling. He doesn't really care about many other people that much. He's just kind of to himself. But now he has someone who he does kind of care about, who's in this really dire situation. And it is, you can feel that that's one of the biggest driving factors of this. He's not just doing this because he originally, and I didn't talk about this, but in the previous episode, he did not want to do the island raid. He actually, so he goes to the like training where the Japanese and Korean are sparring with each other. That was like a big thing that happened in the previous episode as well, is the Japanese and Koreans like sparred each other, got to see their powers a bit. It was pretty epic. But he doesn't really participate in the sparring. He just stops one of the fights because one of the Koreans was going one of the Japanese was going way too far to actually save the girl that is later now he's trying to save again, funny enough. And so we have that whole thing that happened. But then after that sparring match, he's like, I'm not going to go to the island raid. My mom just came back. I'm not going to do any, like, I'm done. I'm not going to participate in the raid. And so but what he does do is he leaves his shadows with each of the characters so he can kind of keep track of them, and that's how he knows that shit hit the fan. And yeah, he just appears, he starts fighting, that's how he knows that it's going wrong. And I know I've spoiled a bunch of things for you, Carson, I apologize, but I can't not talk about it, because I think it was the best episode in terms of just pure animation style. The music, another thing with this is the music plays to the action so well. I played you one of the songs when we were on our drive to MegaCon a while back. And it was that awesome. Song gets used a few times. But they have a different song that's going to get added to my playlist immediately after this, that started playing during this fight. And I've talked about this before, but I'm buddy watching this with a friend of mine. And even he immediately, when that song started playing, he was like, dude, the music is going so hard right now. He's like, this is insane. But yeah, that's Solo Leveling. I'll also talk about, I have a few things that I'll talk about really briefly. This, I promise this won't take up as much time, just because I've only watched 2 episodes, because I was actually watching this as I set up for today and taking some notes. But I watched 2 more episodes of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime.
Absolutely.
Of course. And It's really good, dude. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it, because in these 2 episodes, and it's still ongoing, so I can't. This is another reason why it's going to be very brief, because these 2 episodes are kind of like, it's a continuous story, and I haven't gotten to the end of it yet, so I don't want to say much that's probably going to get proven wrong. But essentially, these humans who don't like that the monsters are becoming so powerful and getting their own home are trying to essentially impose, like, they go and basically accuse the monsters of a bunch of things.
Sure.
And it kind of goes, it's a big part of this story is just racism. Like, it's not even sugarcoating it. It is a clear thing of racism that this story is trying to tell, is the discrimination between monsters and humans. And these humans are very clearly very racist against monsters. And so they send some of their people over to kind of confront the monsters, to stir up some trouble, is basically what happens. And it's amazing, because these 3 humans who are the most arrogant people you'll ever, they're infuriatingly arrogant, and they're like, oh, we're better than everyone, blah, like, whatever. They even believe they're better than the other humans that sent them here. They're just so stuck in their heads. And honestly, it's why they sent those people, because they knew that they would be able to stir up the most trouble. But essentially, they go to try and stir up trouble, and one of there was one female with them who tries to accuse one of the monsters of sexually assaulting her. Essentially, she's like, oh, like, she falls on the ground, dramatically screams like, oh, he touched me. And a lot of the people there are like, oh, that's not good, like, whatever. One of the other monsters comes up and is like, hey buddy, how you doing? And he's like, I didn't do it, man. And he's like, oh, I know. And the female, like the human female, is like, what? You believe, like, you don't believe me? And he's like, no, we believe our friends here. I in fact think you're making this up. And then all the other, like, people around, because there's a mix of humans and monsters that are watching this, and even the humans are kind of like, yeah, honestly, this girl is kind of stupid. Like, what does she think she's doing here? Like, does she really think she's gonna get away with this? And it was so funny, because I was so afraid that there was gonna be like this whole big thing, like, oh no, she's sexually assaulted. And I was like, I really don't, like, it's not that I don't like where this is going. I was just like, oh man, this is making me really uncomfortable. Like, they're talking about these types of things. And then all of a sudden it was just like, oh no, we don't believe you. Like, get the fuck out of here. They literally tell her to screw off. They kick her out. Well, they try to. And then that's when a big battle ensues. And that's where I'm still in that battle. So I can't really talk about that, where they're actively fighting the people that came in to stir up trouble. But it was so funny that it was just like, oh my God, this goblin sexually assaulted me. And everyone else was like, are you stupid? You really thought you were going to get away with that? Are you an idiot? And I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. And it's not like and here's the thing, like, don't get me wrong. It's very clearly not something where they're trying to tell, like, the narrative of like, oh, don't believe sexual assault victims just because they're your friend. It's more told in a way that's like, hey, we trust each other here. We know that this person, or this monster more specifically, would not do this. Like, and then it's found out that she was trying to basically brainwash everyone to believe her, but her brainwashing doesn't work, which throws her for a loop. She's like, what do you mean? Like, you don't believe me? And she's like, my skill. And everyone's like, oh, you can't do that here. Like, that just doesn't work. And I was like, oh man, that's so great. That's like, oh, that was so amazing. But enough about Reincarnated. I have a lot, actually. I have a lot of things. I didn't realize how much I had to talk about until I was compiling my list.
Go for it, man. Do it.
So, next thing is Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. I talk about this every single week. It is the first manhwa I've ever read. It is the best manhwa I've ever read. Obviously, it's low bar when it's the only one.
It's the only one. It is
the best and the only one. But dude, I like, genuinely, I'm so glad that I started with this. Obviously, there's always that fear of starting the bar too high.
Yeah.
But like, I don't really care. This is I am currently a little past. I think I'm at episode 111 right now, I think. And oh my God, the stakes have never been higher. I talked, like, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about how Dokja Kim, the main character, had like challenged the beings of this universe and then lost, essentially, where like he tried to challenge them and then it didn't go well. Like, you think like, oh my God, it's gonna go so well, and it doesn't go his way. This time He challenges them. It doesn't go his way again, but then he pulls the old Uno reverse card, and like the beings in this world are like, oh, you thought, they even make a comment, they're like, oh, you think you're so much smarter, you use your intelligence, you think you can outsmart us, and Dr. Kim is like, yes, I can, motherfucker.
Yes, I can and am better than, I'm smarter than all of you.
Exactly. Well, it's the thing. The thing is, like, there is a very clear moment in this like recent run of chapters that I'm reading in this arc where they're trying to defeat a big enemy. Where essentially what happens is he tries to befriend the enemy, and he actually does. He is able to persuade this enemy, and the beings that oversee the universe in these scenarios of what's happening aren't happy with the way that went. They're like, no, you should not have befriended this person. So then they overwrite the monster, or it's not a monster, but this villain, and basically take over control. So he just made friends with one of these catastrophes, is what they're called, is catastrophes. And he's like, oh, great. We're like, this is going so great. Like, we don't have to, he literally turns to these beings like, we don't have to submit to you. The scenario's over, like, whatever. And then they're like, nope, we don't like that you did that, so we're going to overwrite that. And they literally do. They just overwrite it and make her pure evil. So then they do end up having to kill her. And it was actually like really emotional in a way, because they spent a lot of time humanizing this catastrophe in a way that was really like interesting.
Sure, yeah.
And you're like, oh man, like they're trying to befriend her, like she's done all these terrible things, but we know why, and we find out why. And I'm not going to get too far into that, because again, this will get animated and then you will be watching it. But
sure,
but they spend so much time humanizing her and giving you the reasons through like not really flashbacks, but like, I guess, like interesting like character bits, because that's one thing. The show doesn't really do flashbacks in a traditional way. It'll probably be animated like a flashback, but because it's a web novel and you're scrolling, essentially you'll have like the character, and then you'll have like a very clear like cutout that's like showing you some images of what like the story of her past is, and then you go back to the original like flow of the story. So I guess like it is a flashback, but told in a way that I haven't really seen before personally. I don't know if that's a regular manhwa thing, but anyways, the beings are like, we don't like that, we overwrite, we make her evil. He has to kill her, unfortunately. It's really emotional, and Dr. Kim, the main character, is livid. He is so pissed that he literally starts pummeling one of these like beings. Like he's like, oh, you think you can play God? And he just fucking clocks him in the face. And that's kind of where I'm ended right now. Is he like clocked him in the face, and like I stopped reading because I got busy. But yeah, that was very epic. It was a very emotional past few chapters. I have more to talk about. Another thing that I watched this week. So I watch One Piece in dub, as everyone knows. But there's one thing, and we're gonna talk about two One Piece things this week, actually. One is One Piece fan letter has not been dubbed yet, unfortunately. But I got impatient and I watched it in subbed. I will rewatch it when it gets dubbed. But One Piece fan letter, and I will talk in the briefest of terms, because this is like, actually, it's not huge spoilers for you. It kind of is, but essentially, One Piece fan letter is a like 22-minute episode that tells a story of a girl who's a really big fan of Nami. One Piece. It's a completely different animation style than any other episode of One Piece, to make it very clear that this is like, it is canon in a way. I don't know if it's canon. I hope it is, just because of the amazing story that it tells. This tells the story of this fan of Nami who just wants to get a fan letter, hence the name, to Nami. That's her entire goal. And this takes place, I'm not going to say when it takes place, because you haven't gotten there yet, but it takes place at a very specific and pivotal time in the story, in which it makes sense that she can't get the fan letter to Nami. And through this, it doesn't just tell the story of this one girl. It actually tells the story of the people of the One Piece world. So One Piece is very focused on, obviously, like the main crew and some of the other pirates in the One Piece world. But this tells the story of some of the Marines and tells the story of some of just the human people that are having to experience these grandiose, exactly, that have to experience. I mean, if you think about it, now you haven't gotten to the more grandiose fights and scenes in One Piece yet, but as you can imagine with what you have seen, and I'm curious to see where you've gotten to. We're not gonna, well, I know where you've gotten to, but anyways, imagine like Arlong Park, for instance, like telling the story of a random person in Arlong Park experiencing Luffy coming in and destroying Arlong and all these things. Like you do kind of get that, but not on that personal level because it's more focused on Nami's story. This is telling the story of some of the Marines and some of the like regular characters that are going through a very big pivotal like arc in One Piece, all in the course of 22 minutes. And it has such one beautiful animation, but also the amount of emotion. I actually cried. I cried quite a bit when I watched this because it is so, again, I talk about this so much. I'm going to talk about it forever. It tells such a human story of these characters without powers, without devil fruits, without anything, that are just trying to survive in this really screwed up time. And what this can accomplish in 22 minutes is honestly more than some anime can accomplish in long running series, in the sense of I want to see more from them. I don't think we ever will, unfortunately, because that's kind of the point. It's not that they all die at the end. It's not a spoiler, but it's more of the point of, again, world building. It's adding depth. It's making you think. Whenever you watch like Luffy fight this main villain, you're not just gonna be like, oh, this is so cool. It actually forces you to be in like, but what about that guy? Like that person just had their house destroyed, or this person just lost their family member because a house fell on them or something like that. And it goes back to like Invincible in telling that story of the
with Powerplex.
Exactly, with Powerplex. Like this is not exactly the same. Like I shouldn't even say it's not similar in the way where this person has like hates them or anything like that. She's actually a fan of specifically Nami and the One Piece crew. But again, it tells that story of like what it would be like to just be a normal girl having to survive in this world. I would love to talk more, but it would get it way into spoilers. And that's why the next thing I talk about, which is the last thing I'll talk about in this segment, is also going to be very, very brief. And that's because One Piece dub finally caught up to the Japanese anime. On this past Tuesday, they released episodes. I have it right down here. It's episodes 1109 through 1122. I've watched all of them, and I had not seen them in Japanese dub. I have not seen these episodes at all. I was waiting for the episodes to release in English to watch them, and I finally did. And oh my god, I that is all I will say, because the amount of lore building that they cram into these few episodes, I think it's like 20 some odd. I didn't count, but it's like 14 episodes, I think. The amount of insane world building that happens in like big revelations that you come to about the characters, the One Piece world in just these 12 episodes is honestly more than a lot of other entire arcs, in a way where, and this isn't a huge spoiler either, so I can say that I feel comfortable saying this, but we're in the, like right now, what we're watching is the final saga of One Piece. Oda has already confirmed. We don't know when One Piece will officially end, but he has confirmed that this is the final saga, not the final arc, but the final saga. So this is the Egghead Island. We are getting into in the manga, there's an arc that I cannot name because it is a huge spoiler. But the arc in the manga, and you can really feel through these episodes, oh yeah, we're getting ready to end this series, and we're getting ready to end it really well. But it's funny because most of the time when you're getting ready to end a show, you just spend all your time answering questions. No. This is asking more questions. This is building more out in the world. And that's where I'm really curious. I'm like, we're in the final saga, but does that really mean we're ending anytime soon? I don't think so. But man, I'm so hyped. for that to see where One Piece goes. But that's enough about what I've been consuming this week, because I've been rambling on for a while now and I can't talk more because I want to talk about One Piece so bad. And spoiler alert, I will talk about One Piece again. But I can't spoil it. So
it'll
Carson,
be a ways off.
tell me what you. Oh yeah, we're like 1,000 episodes off from what you were watching. But yeah. Anyways, Carson, tell me what you've been consuming. Fill me in.
Yeah, so this week we had another episode of Daredevil Born Again. I have loved the show ever since it dropped a few weeks ago. I think that they're doing the show justice. They're doing the original Daredevil show justice. They're also adding things to it, which I actually kind of really enjoy and I really like, that I don't think the original series did. Like I like. Okay, we'll touch on this. The fight scenes. Some of it is more CGI than the original, and I don't necessarily think that any of the fight scenes in Born Again are better than that first season 1 hallway fight. But
I have seen that fight.
Yeah, they're not ever going to be as good as that, because that was, it's so different. But they are able to do a lot more. Like Daredevil's he's so much more comic accurate. He's not Spider-Man, but he's swinging around the city with his billy clubs and whatnot. They're just able to do a lot more, and it's really unique to see the different styles from one show and then this one. And so honestly, to its credit, it does a very good job when it stands out on its own and it's different. I will say this episode, as much as I still love it, I want to preface by saying I loved it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was good. And for the story they're trying to tell right now, it's perfectly fine and serviceable. It's not filler by any means, but this is the worst episode of the 3 they have released so far. Okay. And that's, again, it's not a bad thing. But when I talked about this the first time, I had brought up the fact that this was originally 2 separate concepts for a show. One where it just took the original actors and put them back in their roles, but it was a complete hard soft reboot of the universe. And then they changed it like a few years ago to be a direct connection, a direct sequel to that original Daredevil Defenders universe world. And I love that idea, but they had already shot the majority of the show with that original concept.
So I have a question, and if you don't want to answer this because you feel like it's going to be too big of a spoiler, please do not answer it. And I don't know how familiar are you with the source material of Daredevil Born Again? Because Daredevil Born Again is the most well-known, famous Daredevil story in history. If you ask anyone a Daredevil arc who's not a huge comic book fan, that would be the only arc that anyone would be able to name. Maybe, like, I can't even think of any exceptions. Like, there's good Daredevil arcs, but this is Daredevil Born Again. That title is the most infamous arc in Daredevil history. Does this, to your knowledge of the comic book, is this a retelling of the Daredevil Born Again comic, or is this just using the title in telling a different story? Because if that's the case, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be a little disappointed, because I really wanted to see the Born Again story told. But
and I think it's tricky to say that because I haven't officially read it. I'm a nerd and I'm a comic nerd and I friggin' love Daredevil, so I know the story. I know what happens.
Yeah.
And I know enough to figure it out. But from what I know, it's about half and half. And the only reason I say that is because technically in universe, half of the Born Again story was already told within season 2 of Daredevil. And I mean that because like they pulled for, and this is honestly something I do like what Marvel does do, instead of pulling directly from one story, other than like, Infinity War was purely the Infinity War story with some things shuffled around. This one is, okay, let's pull from this part of the comic book story. Let's place this here, and then we can save this for another time. Again, without getting into too many spoilers, because I do want you to experience this on your own. The best way to say is it's about half and half. For what they're trying to depict of the original story, it's good. For what is original, it's still fairly good. But I think, and this is what I was gonna basically say, when they've already shot the original concept, or most of the original concept for what they wanted for Daredevil Born Again. And then they come back now saying, hey, we want to bring back all these characters. We want it to be a sequel. At some point it's going to be a little choppy. That they're going to, you're going to see that there's stitches in, there's things that they've just added, and maybe it doesn't feel right to be there, even though it's really darn good. So like, I'll say this, because he's in the trailer. Punisher comes back, and we see Frank Castle again. We see Frank Castle again in this episode, and it is by far the best scene of Daredevil Born Again so far. It's beautiful. It's to a certain degree, it's haunting, because obviously the whole point of the Born Again story, and this is from the comic, is Matt is willing to cross the line that he has always towed for himself, which is I don't kill. I will not kill anybody. And he's strongly feeling this now, all these years later, after finally putting the mask aside. And the scene was so good. First up, I love John Bernthal as an actor. I think he's so good in everything he does. I'm so excited he's in Nolan's Odyssey. Not sure which character, but I'm so.
I don't think we know most of the characters that are in Nolan's Odyssey.
We know.
Matt I mean, we know the characters, but casting.
Yeah, well, we obviously know Matt Damon's playing Odysseus, and Anne Hathaway's playing Penelope, but that's pretty much it. We don't know anything else.
And do we know Tom Holland's character? Because Tom Holland is also one of the stars.
Yeah, he's the son, Telemachus. He's Telemachus.
Okay.
And then we got rumors of other stuff. But anyway, I love John Bernthal. I think he's great. And I love him as the Punisher. It is his magnum opus. He's so good in this character. He's so good in this role. And so honestly, just, you could put them in a scene and it could be awful, but seeing those two characters on screen again together is just, it's so cool. And I'm so happy we get that.
Yeah.
But they one up it by it actually being this really good heart-to-heart scene that only Frank and Matt can actually have. And I think that it's in a lot of ways, it was electrifying. You're locked into the scene. In other moments where it's heartbreaking. And this is just one scene of the episode. But I thought it was really good what they did with that scene. Now the rest of the episode. That Frank Castle scene and that Matt Murdock scene was not a part of the original show. And it is very clear and it is very evident that it was thrown in there. Thrown in there enough, and it gets the story by, like it still connects, but you can tell it was stitched in there. And that's how a lot of this episode feels. There's a lot of scenes that you can see were added later on. The whole point of this episode
like reshoots. Yes. Kind of like one of the biggest problems that we voiced when we talked about it in the first episode of the podcast with the Brave New World, where we felt like a lot of the problem that they ran into was the fact that they felt the need to reshoot a lot of the episodes and kind of go back and change and piecemeal it together, which in my opinion, unless it's done very minimally, is if you're talking whole big, like a magnum opus parts of the thing being reshot, which was very evident in Brave New World, unfortunately, that's where it's like, don't do that. If it's small little fixes and we didn't get this scene exactly we wanted, let's reshoot this little scene, like that's fine. But I guess it's a little disappointing to hear that Daredevil's now running into that same issue.
When you're overhauling your entire... Well, and again, the whole point of what I said when I started with this was, it's still not bad. Like, I actually would still go as far as to say it's good. If you look at... I hate talking about them because I don't trust them. I don't like the critic reviews on the app or the audience reviews on it. But Rotten Tomatoes, if you look at it, the score actually went up after this episode dropped. So it's still good, but there is a very clear line of this is what they were planning originally. This is what they're planning now. And sometimes it's a little awkward when it matches. It's not bad, it's just awkward and you can feel it. And honestly, until season 2 hits, I think that you're probably just gonna have to deal with that the entire season for season 1, which I'm fine with, especially if they course correct it and it gets back on track and it feels like normal, a normal cohesive storyline once again, which I'm perfectly fine with. That completely fine with that. They also made just some choices and I'm just like, yeah, it works, but I'm like, I don't want to hear "We Built This City" sung to Wilson Fisk twice over. I really don't feel the need.
I'm curious to get context to that when I finally watch it. That's very interesting.
But the episode ends with a massive not reveal, but it's like, okay, we're building to it. We're building to that born again name. He's going to become Daredevil again. Wilson Fisk is going to become the Kingpin again. And it's very evident at the end of the episode that that's what they're building towards. And obviously we're going to get that grand return to form. We're going to see everybody in these characters again. They're building back. It's like the whole point of The Sopranos is watching a man refuse to change. That's the whole point of the show. And that's what I love about it. And it's kind of similar here. These men say they're different. They want to try to be different. But there's always that part of them that's going to return to it. You're never going to truly be gone. And you go back to that regular form that you once had. For Matt Murdock, it's Daredevil. And for Wilson Fisk, it's being the Kingpin. As much as they both want to try to change, that's who they are deep down. And honestly, that's what I still love about Born Again and what I do think they're doing really well. But the main thing I actually really wanted to talk about today, other than Daredevil, was I watched the entire original trilogy of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Not all 5 movies.
Not for the first time? Not for the first time, I would assume. Yeah.
Not for the first time.
I think we've watched some of those movies together. But...
Oh, we absolutely did at one point. Pirates of the Caribbean was this is story time with Carson again. I love these favorite I love these favorite moments on the podcast. Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one specifically, was at least as far as I can remember, it was the first film I ever remember watching with my father. It's the first film that I fell in love with. I remember the entire rest of the year after watching it in I think it was June of 2007 or something, DVDs, Blu-rays, and it was constantly on this little DVD player that I used to have as a kid. I mean, I swear, I dressed up as Jack Sparrow. All I wanted to be was Jack Sparrow. I read all the books and pirate maps and this and that. It's such a big part of my life. And so, okay, say what you want. I'm biased about this. Until Lord of the Rings came along, it was my favorite action adventure franchise. And specifically, the trilogy. I don't talk about the last 2 films. They're not horrible, but I don't like them. I don't like to talk about
they don't feel as necessary in a way where, granted, every single Pirates of the Caribbean for the most part is very standalone. But
sure. The way I look at it,
to a degree, to a degree, they're standalone.
Right.
Yeah, you can still watch them individually, and you'll still have an enjoyable experience without having watched all of them in succession.
Sure.
Is essentially what I'm saying. Some stories you can't.
Sure, absolutely. And the thing that I love about this first trilogy is it is all really connected. And I feel what they were trying to do from start to finish. I understand the story they were trying to tell, even though that first movie was like lightning a bottle. They probably never thought they would get a franchise out of this. And so they kind of turned it into a trilogy, but they did it better than, some of what some franchises today do. But I watching, let's start with the first movie, because that first movie is just so good. I mean, the story itself is so simple. But I'm going to constantly refer to this with this movie in particular, but lightning in a bottle, it just has such an energy and a liveliness to it that it makes you engaged and immersed in this world in a way that you really didn't feel like you would from a movie that's based off of a theme park ride. And they do such a good job building the world, building the set. You feel the Caribbean come to life. You feel this this world come to life from the second. And that's why, when you have this simple town life and all of a sudden enter Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow, everything, it turns on its head, and you understand the pirate aspect and the pirate world of it. And Johnny Depp, oh my God, let's talk about Johnny Depp for a minute. He is one of my favorite actors of all time, not just because of this role, but this role is by far it is his best thing he's ever done. And he is so good at it.
I personally agree. I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar. I mean, he has so many.
Nobody can
He has so many
improvise stuff like
iconic.
that. Oh my
No,
gosh.
there are so many iconic lines and moments from the Pirates of the Caribbean where it is. I love. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen all of the movies, and man, like you said, it is just in my opinion. I don't have as much of a deep love for them as you do. I really enjoy them. I feel like it's just because I haven't watched them near as much as you have, and they weren't as connected to my childhood. But I always enjoy watching them. I always have a fun experience where, like, obviously it's not like you watch it to feel good, but you watch it to watch a really funny character in Johnny Depp and go on stupid pirate adventures, and that's just it to me. That's what I enjoy about the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and that's why I know they do tell a connected story, but I feel like I really can just sit down and be like, what do I want to watch? I'm just going to rewatch one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Like, I don't need to worry about which one it is. I can just throw it on and have some fun.
Sure. And I think what this movie has over all of the pirate movies, like, you had pirate movies that came out before this. But it's not good when you look at all the pirate movies that came before it and go, I think the best one is Muppet Treasure Island. No, there were no movies out that had ever done the pirate name justice like Pirates of the Caribbean did. Let's use this as an example. Captain Barbossa is a stereotypical pirate guy. Obviously, he has the curse and whatnot, but he is the stereotypical pirate. You would think that'd just be an immediate turn off, an immediate, okay, this is no different than anything that's come before it. What makes it different? It's how good he plays the role and how much he owns it, and he leans into it. Like, because especially because it's balanced out with Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow, but Jeffrey Rush, oh my God, dude. Like, he owns every second of screen time he's on. And the sad thing is, like, they're all evil. All pirates are evil. I don't think that there's you can't honestly say that pirates are not good, are not evil. It's so difficult to say that. But you do feel for every single one of the pirates who are on the Black Pearl while it's under this curse, while they're, unable to die, unable to eat, unable to literally live. They're not able to endure any of the pleasures that it comes with pirating. And they're just, it sucks. And you feel for these characters because they do such a good job telling that specific story. And so as far as that first movie goes, dude, I start to finish, it's so good, and I love the way it ends too. Like, I could put that movie on at any point and just, if I want to feel good on a good day, that is my go-to movie, because it's so well done, it's so wrapped together, and nobody expected it to. Not a single person ever expected that movie to do as well as it did. Fun fact, before I talk about the other movies, did you know that Will Turner was technically supposed to be the main character of that franchise, and Jack Sparrow was supposed to be the sub character?
I do. I don't know the whole history of it, but I have heard that before. Like, I remember at one point hearing it, probably in passing on like a YouTube or Instagram short or something like that. But yeah.
If you objectively watch Black Pearl from start to finish and you look at how the characters are laid out, Will Turner is the character who he's the lead character. It's his story. He's the one who has an arc. Like, objectively,
I mean,
that's what it is. Jack Sparrow doesn't change beyond, okay, he gets his ship back at the end. He doesn't have an arc. He overcomes his enemy. Okay, I guess that's kind of his arc. Not really. It's Will Turner's story, which I also find really fascinating. I didn't really even think about that until years later. And that's also why it changes my whole perspective on this franchise in some ways. But enough about the first movie. The last two, which I talk about these two in their own. I have always what you said, that you can always watch these as standalone stories. I agree with that for the first one. I agree with that for the second. You can watch it as a standalone story. The third one only really works if you've watched the first one or the second one, because it doesn't really, it's hard to connect the dots at some points. But that second movie, okay, you want to talk about stepping your game up. and just going balls to the walls. Let's pull out every fucking, thing we have available, and let's just throw it at the audience. I love Dead Man's Chest. Dead Man's Chest is a unique, visually creative story. And it gives you more of the world outside of, okay, here are 3 islands, because really in the first movie you only go to 3 places. You go to Port Royal, you go to Tortuga, where is like all the pirates are at, and then you go to the Isla de Muerta, which is where the cursed treasure is at. You don't really go anywhere else, and you don't build out the world. Dead Man's Chest really builds out the world, and you spend more time in these locations, and you get a sense of how big the Caribbean actually is within this movie, as opposed to just traveling back and forth between 2 places the entire time. Yeah. And do not kill me. I love Darth Vader as much as you do. Do not kill me. Davy Jones is the greatest villain, I think, ever.
That's another top 5 we should do one day, or maybe just a ranking, top 5 villains. That's a good one.
He is the greatest villain ever. He has heart. He has character. You understand his motivation. And on top of that, the coolest design ever.
Oh yeah. No, the fact that they were able to accomplish the effects that they did with his character back when they did, and when did that movie come out? 2009?
2005.
Or was it 2005? That's even crazier. We can't even get to that level with a lot of movies currently, not to call out Hollywood, but the fact that his character design was so unbelievably realistic in the movement, in the style, like you felt like that was just a character in the world. It wasn't like this weird CGI monster. No, it was you felt like naturally in the world, which is amazing even to this day.
It's scary knowing that this year is that film's 20th anniversary, and knowing that film is 20 years old this year, because it doesn't feel like it's 20 years old this year.
Yeah.
But no, I think Davy Jones is just the coolest written character, villain, period. He, Bill Nye, not to be confused with the science guy. Bill Nye.
Know he was in this movie. I need to rewatch Pirates of the Caribbean.
He has the hardest job in the second and third films, which is, okay, not only do I have to act my butt off and give a very meaningful performance, but I have to do this in this particular manner because, okay, I have a peg leg, I have a squid for a face, I have all these things which I don't have. So how do I portray this? So if you ever watch any behind the scenes stuff, he's like, he's actually fully embodying the character, and it's so cool to see that, especially once you add the visual effects in. But I love the story of Davy Jones and how, he gives his heart, his love to this sea goddess of Calypso. And because she tasks him with, hey, I want you to save all these souls on the sea, and once every 10 years we can meet again. And then because she chooses not to meet him and she's not there, he becomes full evil, heart ripped out, in a beating chest, locked away, and he fails to do the task that he was assigned to because his heart is broken. And it is genius writing. I mean, it is absolutely incredible writing. Now, not just that, but Davy Jones is a major part of why I love Dead Man's Chest. But let's talk about just the story in general, because this is like a big Infinity War style story where a bunch of storylines are coming together. Jack is simply trying to escape fate from Davy Jones by not dying to the Kraken, not being. He just wants to be a pirate, man. He just wants to be on the seas. He wants to live as long as possible, but he doesn't want to sell his soul to the devil, basically. And
smart man.
Well, and the whole point is of this story is he's overcoming fear. Jack Sparrow in the second movie has so much fear, and it's not until the third act of the movie that he overcomes that fear and he stands up, and he comes back to fight with his friends as his ship's being attacked by the Kraken. the whole movie, he opens his compass and he's like, what do I want? I don't know, because the compass only points to what he wants most. And the truth is, he doesn't know what he wants. And that's why one of my favorite moments in the movie is Jack's in the boat, the Kraken's attacking the ship, everybody's dying, most of his crew's gone, and he finally opens up the compass and he looks at it, and what does he want? He wants to go back on the boat to help his friends, because he is a good man. Like Elizabeth tries to tell him early in the movie, you're going to find out one day that you want to be a good man, that you are a good man.
Yeah.
Will Turner has a great character arc in this movie, with being trapped aboard the Flying Dutchman, is being tricked aboard the Flying Dutchman through Jack, who was trying to sell his soul instead of his own. And he comes and he becomes reunited with his father, who technically should be dead. And so it's a very well done story of father and son being reunited, and how, Will, his whole life, he never had that connection. And so he will do anything at all costs to free his father. And that's why when you get to that third act showdown on the beach, you have Jack fighting to make sure that the Kraken isn't released after Jones is dead. Will only wants to kill Davy Jones so that his father can go free. And then you have a third character in the former Commodore James Norrington, who just wants his career and his status and his life back. And
yeah,
this is why Dead Man's Chest is so good. And even my dad, who isn't the biggest, he likes Godfather, he likes Saving Private Ryan, he likes the films that are realistic. He doesn't really go outside of, he's never going to watch a superhero film. That's probably the best way to say it. Even he looks at these movies and, it's about as crazy and wackadoo as it gets for him. But he says, these were incredible movies. They were so well done. And it's like, even him saying that, I'm like, okay, so that means they did something right. Because that means that somebody who doesn't like this stuff actually likes this stuff.
Well, and one thing I'll say to that, and this is I guess my only problem, it has nothing to do with Pirates of the Caribbean necessarily, but I do genuinely believe that Pirates of the Caribbean and One Piece are the reason we don't get more pirate stories, because some of the, they've already written some of the best pirate stories of all time. One Piece being, not even arguably, it is the biggest pirate story that has ever been told. And Pirates of the Caribbean is the biggest non-animated, it is the biggest real life, not real life obviously, but a live action pirate movie of all time. And I'm not complaining, because I'm so glad to be able to watch them again. Pirates of the Caribbean I enjoy. It's not top of my list or anything, but I do really enjoy them. But I will say, I hope that one day we do get more pirate stories like Pirates of the Caribbean, in a way that we just don't see anymore nowadays. Pirates of the Caribbean is kind of its own echelon, in a way of not necessarily the type of story, and it tells a very not repeat story, but it is not a wholly unique story, but it's told in a unique way of it being pirates, of having these curses, of having all these different elements that come together while still being enjoyable movies that, again, in my opinion, you don't need to worry about every single detail to still enjoy the movie experience.
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that too. But then, I don't know, just all the stories coming together, and then a big finale, Jack coming back to the ship, fighting for his friends, and then the movie ending with, it is a cliffhanger, but it also does wrap up. If the franchise were to end there, it technically does wrap up the story pretty nicely. In some regard, the movie ending with Elizabeth basically being like, "I'm fed up with Jack's antics. I'm fed up with his lies, bullshit, all of it. I'm done with every last thing that he's done, because he has done nothing but lie to me since I've known him. He's a pirate. He's a scumbag." And once Elizabeth realized, okay, this Kraken isn't after the crew, it's not after the ship. Davy Jones didn't send the Kraken to take down the crewmates. It came here for Jack, because that's all that Davy Jones cares about, or that's all that Davy Jones wants. And once Elizabeth realizes that, handcuffs him to the ship. Jack faces his fear with the Kraken as the crew gets away. Not really having a choice in the matter. He's kind of stuck there because he's handcuffed to the ship. And then Captain goes down with his ship. It's emotional. You want to talk about score? My God, dude, Hans Zimmer, man. Oh, he does such a good job in the last two movies, because he doesn't score the first movie. The only thing Hans Zimmer did was the main Pirates theme. That's all he did for the first movie.
Dun 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 dun. Yeah. I mean, again, talk about iconic. That is one of the biggest character themes of all time. Yeah. I mean, that's on the echelon of like Darth Vader's dun 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 dun. Like, ironically enough, I believe both Hans Zimmer, or no, that one's John Williams. The Darth Vader one is John Williams. Hans Zimmer, but they've both done very iconic like character intros. They're some of the most iconic score. Like, I guess I'm forgetting the word off the top of my head, but like, I guess score makers of all time. That's what I'm going to call it, but there's another word for it.
Score makers, music makers, doesn't really matter. You're getting the point across.
Exactly.
Anyway, so the second movie ends with an emotional beat, and then everybody coming back together, basically huddling. They're having like a moment to mourn Jack, and then the witch lady Tia Dom was like, so what if I told you that you could go get him and that he's perfectly fine just in Davy Jones' locker? And they're like, heck yeah, man, let's go. Wait, we need a captain. And down the stairs comes Captain Barbosa, and you're like, what the frick is he doing here? How did he get here? He was dead. He got shot in the last movie. How is he here? And that builds up so much more excitement. And then you get to the third movie, which, if you would ask me years ago what was my favorite Pirates movie, I would have said it's the third movie. I love the third act fight scene. It is probably the best fight scene any of the movies have to offer. It's emotional. It ends so well, and it wraps up the story so nicely. That being said, on rewatch and as an adult, it is by far the worst of the trilogy.
Wow.
It is interesting. It is the worst of the trilogy, and I still love it to death. I will watch that movie any day, anytime. But it's clear that, similar to the Star Wars sequels, there wasn't an original roadmap for these films. It's clear that the first movie was probably going to be a one and done, and then they're like, "Oh, let's start with the second one and let's see where it goes." They did the second one; it was so good, and they're like, "Okay, we have a third movie. We killed Jack already. All we're setting up is that they're going to go get Jack, and what do we do with that? Oh shoot, let's throw in the pirate lords. Let's create this whole world with pirate lords, which have never existed until now. Let's do all, like, I'm trying to think of like specific examples. I could go, I rave about this now, because I'm like, once I made the connection of like, wait a minute, this wasn't set up in the last movie. This is stupid. Yeah. The 9 pieces of 8, the pirate lords, all of this lore that you would think would already have been set up, even if it wasn't set up in the first movie, which is fine, but it's set up in the second movie with Dead Man's Chest. It could have easily been okay. No, none of it's set up. They're setting it all up in this movie. So it kind of drags a little bit because of that, because you kind of have to just accept, okay, this is a thing that they're setting up now, even though they could have done it earlier. The movie drags, and you really do feel that because of that. But not to say there aren't any good moments. I love the crew getting the charts that lead them to Davy Jones' locker, because obviously it's a place that nobody can really find. And this is like the only charts that you can use to find them. They're ancient, they're old. They get a small ship and a good sized crew, and they sail for Davy Jones' locker. They get Jack, they get him out, they bring him back. And then it's really not until you get to the betrayals when it all kind of somewhat falls apart after they get Jack. And it's like, okay, the East Indian Trading Company is actually here. Will, I know I promised you this ship. It's actually going to Sao Fang now. Sorry. Oh, Sao Fang, you wanted the ship? It actually is property of the East India Trading Company. I'm like, what? Why? Just stop with the backstabbing. Just let one group be the backstabber and be done with it, because this is so not necessary. And I'm just like, okay, well, whatever. And so it gets messy. I can't say that it doesn't. It gets messy. Then you get to the pirate lord bits, and you get to all these the 9 pieces of 8. They're setting up to free Calypso, and it's just things that I wish they would have set up prior, because it makes everything messy. And then you get to the third act fight. up until this point, we've had all the information we can get, character development, this and that. And then the third act fight takes place in a friggin' maelstrom in the middle of the ocean, a massive whirlpool. And it's such a cool set piece. You have Jack versus Davy Jones. You have Will trying to save his father. Elizabeth, just honestly, it's one of the first times I went, go women, go women. Women's Elizabeth is sword fighting, and she's holding her own against these really dangerous pirates, and it's so cool. The music, the cinematography, everything they did to set this up. Captain Barbossa driving the Black Pearl into the Flying Dutchman, like that's such a Barbossa thing to do. He's crazy enough to do it, and it works so well. Bottom line is saying, that third act fight is just so good, and then the movie ends, in the most satisfying way. Elizabeth and Will finally get married. Elizabeth is finally happy now that she is married. Will, accepting his past as a pirate, is now the captain of the Flying Dutchman. And then Jack, which it's the most perfect Jack Sparrow ending. Barbossa takes his ship and leaves Jack behind again. And in the first movie, we see Jack pulling up in a sinking boat, and now at the third and what should have been final movie in the trilogy, we see him sailing off in a small boat, just doing Jack Sparrow things of living life and drinking rum. And it's a very emotionally satisfying ending. And honestly, I love this trilogy dearly, deeply. It's very close to my heart. And I don't know, man. If they do another film, they better give Johnny Depp an apology letter and the like $50 million he's asking for, because I ain't watching it if Johnny Depp isn't in it. But that's enough about Pirates of the Caribbean. I love that franchise, and I could talk hours about it, but I think that's enough of it for now. Yeah. I say we move on to our next segment, which is our weekly check-in. Brandon, where are we at in Game of Thrones, buddy? What's going on?
So I'm going to be totally honest with you. I have only watched one episode, that being episode 8 of season 1. I think I've talked about this previously, but one thing about Game of Thrones is, have you ever had, I thought about this, how I wanted to represent this. Have you ever sat down to have like lunch one day, and it's like a weekend, and you kind of spoil yourself for lunch, where like for me, like one of my favorite go-tos is like loaded fries. Like I love loaded fries. But the problem with eating loaded fries is it's so amazing and it's so delicious, but I don't feel like eating anything for the entire rest of the day. That's what watching a single episode of Game of Thrones kind of feels like.
No, I completely get that. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it quite a lot. So don't have me only having watched one episode not be a representative of how much I'm enjoying it. I actually took notes on the episode this time. So if you see me looking down, I'm referencing my notes. But essentially, that's kind of why I've only watched one episode, because especially this episode is so dense. It is so full of big moments, small moments. I don't know. So essentially where this episode starts off is Ned Stark, the king has died. That happened last episode. Yep. Ned Stark is in prison. Ned Stark has been denounced as a traitor. Obviously you have Joffrey, who's now sitting on the throne, who
God.
Okay.
Help us all.
His mom, the queen, and not even the queen. I guess she is still the queen. They refer to her as the queen, even though technically she's not.
So
how does that work?
The term technically is queen regent. So she still technically is queen until Joffrey marries. But the term is queen regent.
Because I don't think they've used that term unless they have, and I missed it.
They won't have used it.
I'm pretty sure they still refer to her as queen.
Yeah, they
whenever they refer to her.
That's later on after a while.
But yeah, no, it's so infuriating. You have I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, and this is like kind of where my notes start off, is Arya Stark is dueling with her dance instructor.
Serial Pharrell.
Yeah, exactly. Cyril Farrell, and they have the Lannisters guards. Well, guards, warriors, whatever. They come in and do that sword fight scene between Cyril Farrell. He has a wooden sword and is fending off these knights while also giving a lesson to Arya while because obviously you start out, they're going through their dance lesson, they have no idea what's happening. And then you cut to this with them being attacked, and he's teaching her a lesson as he fends them off. Now, don't spoil this, but he I guess I don't think he's dead. So the reason why I say that is because he dies off scene, and I never trust people dying off screen. But you do very clearly hear at least him getting stabbed, the dance instructor. And one of the really interesting things is, so obviously Arya runs away because she was instructed to, and she goes and looks for Needle, her sword, because she runs back out into the courtyard area, I guess is the best way to call it. Because I guess technically where the episode starts off is the scene where the Lannister guards come and just start brutally murdering like a bunch of civilian, random people for no reason. I was like, what are these people? I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I was so confused. Obviously, I remembered what had happened in the previous episode, so I knew this is kind of where we were going. But it starts off, and they started killing, what felt like random people. I think looking back, I think that was that the rest of Ned Stark's men that he was killing?
It was pretty much the rest of the men that Stark had brought with him.
Because to me, that didn't really feel like it was explained super well. So when I'm watching it, I'm like, why looking back, it makes more sense because Arya finds a Needle in one of the carriages that gets knocked over. But we start the episode and I'm like, they're just killing all these random people. What's going on?
Why are they killing these people? What did they do?
I was like, what did they ever do to you? But anyways, so Arya finds Needle, and it's so interesting because this boy, never named that I remember, because he doesn't matter at all, runs over and just starts insulting her because she is Arya Stark and the Starks are traitors now. And unintentionally, she turns around and stabs him. So this boy just dies. He gets stabbed and he dies. Arya just killed her first person. Just abruptly out of the blue. It is insane.
Yeah. No, it is. It is.
And it's just so abrupt in the sense of she turns around, and whether meaning to or not. Now, granted, I think she doesn't feel remorse towards it because obviously he was insulting her. She needs to get away. But also, I'm curious to see if she has any reflection on this and what this does for her character, because that's a big moment. They talk about this before with Tyrion Lannister, because Tyrion Lannister, when he's on the road, they get attacked and he brutally murders someone with a shield, and that is made very clear that is his first kill, and it has an effect on him. Granted, it's not a huge character reflecting moment because he's already kind of I don't want to say bad person. He's one of the more morally gray characters so far. He's getting more and more to that dark side now that he's back with his father, which I'll get to a little bit later on. But yeah, that was the whole first kill thing is very interesting, because also I remember when we had moments with Ned and the King where they were talking about first kills, and then you have that scene with the King where he was with his men and they were talking about their first kills. First kills is a big thing that they've built up. So I'm curious to see where that takes Arya Stark's character in a way of this being supposedly her first kill. But then we cut to Lord Varys. I believe I'm saying that correctly.
Varys.
Varys?
Varys with a V. With a V.
Oh, I heard Barris when they kept saying, and that's what I have in my notes is Barris, because I didn't look up the character names. I just wrote them down as I was taking notes. But Lord Varys is very clearly playing every side that he can, which he even says. He says, Ned Stark is who do you serve? Because essentially this scene, to give context, is Varys goes to Ned Stark in the dungeon and is having that conversation of you're a dead man, right? There is no getting out of this. And Ned kind of, he knows. He is very much, he's very clear that he very much knows he's dead. He is a dead man. I know when he dies, unfortunately. I know how he dies. I will get to that when it happens. But that's not a spoiler because it's very clear that he's accepting that fate at that point. But Lord Varys comes to him and has that conversation of like, oh, you're screwed. Like this is, but he also gives that update. And that's where you're like, who does he serve? And that Stark asks, he's like, who do you serve? And Lord Varys is like, I serve the realm. Someone has to, which is a very interesting line because right now you have the Lannisters who only care about money. You have the Starks who care about order, not necessarily order, but they do kind of want peace, but they also have their own, like everyone has their own motives. And you have Varys over here who is very clearly, he's trying to play that neutral party, but he's not. Like he's kind of he's playing every side. Like that is exactly what it is. And not in a, here's the difference though. And I don't have it in my notes, so I forgot his character, the one who's in love with Ned's wife.
Littlefinger, Peter Baelish.
Littlefinger, yeah. He was playing all sides, but for his own gain. He was doing it to further himself. Lord Varys is playing all sides to steer it in a direction that will be the most favorable to the realm as a whole. Which it's essentially, it should be two different characters doing the same thing, but it's not, because one's doing it for their own gain and one's doing it for, in their eyes, what is the best for the realm. Now, I think we'll soon realize that that's not actually what like, I don't think it's what's best for the realm, but it's what he believes it is best for the realm at the time. I literally have in my notes, the queen is the biggest POS piece of shit. That's just in my notes. The reason why I wrote that is because this is this.
It's so true. That's the problem. Is you're absolutely right. That's the issue.
She's such a big piece of shit. I don't even want to remember her name. I'm going to refer to her as the queen. Because she's the biggest piece of shit and I hate her, and she's worse than Joffrey at this point. But the reason why I wrote that is because the scene that I'm referring to is the scene with Sansa Stark, where she goes in and the queen, and to a lesser extent Joffrey, but mainly the queen, because that's who's made very clear who's actually running the show around here, is confronting Sansa with the crimes of her father. Essentially, your father's he's committed treason, he's committed heinous crimes against the king. And Sansa is trying to do her best to kind of negotiate in a way of like, she knows her relationship with her father is very complicated, but you can tell that she doesn't want her dad to die. That is a very big part of what's going on right now. And it is, again, that back and forth and negotiate. She's just a child. What is she, like 15, I think? I don't think ages are very explicitly spelled out at any point in the show.
It's
again,
hard.
unless I missed it.
It's hard, but I'm pretty sure she's 13.
She feels 13. That changes it even more. Like this young child being confronted in this world where her dad is now being convicted of treason, which in any world, not just the Game of Thrones world, is an executable offense. Like that is what that means. They don't have to say, oh, we're going to kill your father. She knows that the second that word treason leaves anyone's mouth, he's dead. And it's treason against the king, not just treason against like we have our first instance of, I guess, treason in a way where the character breaks the oath of the wall and gets executed immediately. No questions asked. Well, I guess questions were asked, but there's no excuse. He just dies immediately. Now, he shouldn't have, because he was right, and he was right in warning them, which is another thing that comes up later in this episode with the White Walkers. But she's getting confronted. Sansa is getting confronted with the crimes of her father, and she makes, and not at this point, but I'll skip around a little bit. She makes a deal essentially with Joffrey. She's like, if you have any love for me in your heart, you will forgive my father. And I love that scene so much because, again, everything you've gotten up into this point was Sansa basically hating her dad because he doesn't support her love of Joffrey. But she still loves him as a dad and still cares for him as her family in a sense of, please, I will do anything if you spare my father. And now, unfortunately, Joffrey being Joffrey, but mainly this is coming from Joffrey. This is one of those rare instances where the queen does kind of step back and is curious. You can tell that she's like, how is Joffrey going to react to this?
What are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to say? Are you going to have mercy? But Joffrey is like, I will do it for you because I love you under one condition, and that is he has to accept me as king. And that's not going to happen. Obviously, we know Ned Stark is a man of character. He is a man of principle. No matter how much Sansa begs him, it will not happen. But Sansa's like, I will make him. Now, we haven't seen that effort happen yet because, again, I've only seen one episode. But it was very interesting. And it wasn't unexpected in any way. I honestly, that's kind of where I thought it would have gone with Sansa, in the way that Sansa was going to try and negotiate. Because another thing that happens in a scene, I'm going to jump into my notes here in a second. So jumping back, you jump back to Tyrion Lannister, who had just escaped the Vale, where he won his trial by combat, but his representative really is the one who won the trial by combat. And they're walking through the woods, and they are sitting by this campfire, and they're roasting a goat, and they're kind of just they were chatting, but it was more in the ways of, you can tell that the only reason that and I didn't write his name down because it was mentioned once. Bronn. The only reason he stood up is because he knew he was going to get paid well, and that was discussed in this. Is like a Tyrion or a Lannister always pays his debts. That's if you had to give a tagline to the Lannisters, that is the tagline of the Lannisters. Is the Lannister
that the house motto? There's a scene later.
Correct. It is
later in the show. There's a scene later in the show where a kid's in schooling or whatever, and the one woman keeps. Oh no, it actually might have already have happened. Because I'm pretty sure it happens with Bran later in season 2. Bran's getting educated.
I was gonna say, I know it hasn't happened yet, but
it happens in this. Okay, it's kind of a spoiler, but it doesn't matter. It's just a scene that means nothing. But later on in season 2, Bran's getting educated, and the Maester looks at him and goes like, "Okay, let's go with House Stark. What is that? It's the sigil's a wolf, and this is the motto." And the instructor's like, "No, that's not the motto. But Lannister's motto is, a Lannister always pays their debt." Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm even getting that wrong myself. That's actually what Bran says. He says a Lannister always pays their debts, and the instructor's like, "No, that's a saying they use, but that's not the motto they have. No, you're wrong. What's the actual motto?" So it's interesting that you bring that up. But that, I think specifically, and you'll come to see this in later seasons anyway. But I think you really can understand how in Game of Thrones, family means everything to every single one of these houses. If you're not our family, unless you are a means to an end or are, allegiances temporarily align, I don't care about you. You don't care about me. I have my power here, and this is where I want to stay.
Well, and it's one thing where, and I'm going to use One Piece as an example. One Piece, and you'll get to this isn't a spoil. One Piece is very much a story of loyalty. Game of Thrones is kind of not the polar opposite of that, but it is very self-serving, where you might have some, like you said, it's kind of like that means to an end. That is, any relationship that is outside of your family is just a means to an end, and that is made very clear. For instance, this is jumping around a bit, but when Robb Stark is rallying the troops that are going to go march on the capital, he goes and finds people who essentially owe his family a debt. And that's how he is able to kind of conjure up, I think it was mentioned, about 20 or 30,000 men that are going to fight alongside of him. It's because they owe they're either already members of his family's guard and army, or they're people who owe his family a debt.
Sure.
And again, it's just a means to an end. There's no loyalty there other than, okay, basically you scratched my back this one time, I will scratch your back this one time. And there's a line that's brought up, again, jumping around, of Oathbreaker, where Robb Stark is confronting this character who's, I can't remember if I wrote his name down here, but he's confronting this one character in the sense of they're gonna run away. They're one of the big houses or I guess, groups of people who was being represented in terms of Rob looking for people to help fight for his army.
Sure.
And he made it, like, this character made an oath to Ned Stark that, like, I will help fight for your family, and he tries to chicken out of it, and that's when Rob sticks his direwolf on him and bites off, I think, 2 or 3 of his fingers. And I love how they just laugh afterwards. Like, that just goes to show you how, like, normal and brutal how normalized brutality is in this world.
Yeah.
Where this guy just gets 2 or 3 of his fingers bitten off, and they just laugh about it. It's just like, oh, well, I guess I'm down a few fingers now.
Oh,
and then they just, yeah. It's like, damn. And it's not just like a nervous laugh either. They're like belly laughing.
Oh yeah.
And it's just so, it's so interesting. But anyway, back to what I was originally talking about with Tyrion Lannister. He meets Shagger with the Stone Crows and kind of builds up that, like, again, it's that means to an end alliance. I'll give your people the Vale. Like, he's basically promising them the entire Vale, because there is a conglomeration of tribes, the Stone Crows being one of them, that live in the Vale but are treated as, like, not even second class, like bottom of the barrel citizens in the Vale.
Yeah.
And Tyrion Lannister is promising them the means to conquer the Vale. Not necessarily promising them the Vale as a whole, like he is to a degree,
right,
but he's more promising them the means to gather to take over the Vale, like the swords. I think he was like, when Tyrion eventually is speaking to his father later, I think he mentioned something about like 3,000 swords and shields and things like that, which, again, they're not looking for the swords and shields in terms of manpower. They're looking at it to give these tribes the means to take over the Vale and protect themselves. But again, that's just, again, the Lannisters always pay their debts. It's brought up a million times this episode, because this episode is very focused on the Lannisters. But going to a different part of this episode, you have Khaleesi that is with Drogo and his tribe, and you start off their story with them like burning a village to the ground and like killing people left and right, taking slaves, things of that nature. And it's very brief. You don't get a lot of Khaleesi in this episode, or Drogo. Like, you take a lot of time, but it's really only to serve one purpose, and that's essentially Khaleesi doesn't like that these women are being taken for sex slaves. That's the entire all the women in the village, whenever they take over, are taken as sex slaves to be given to the men who took victory in battle. That is their trophy. Khaleesi's not a big fan of that. She has a heart to a degree. She is still a very like brutalist in a way, but she still has a heart mainly only for women, at least as of yet. And she basically pleads with Drogo, like, hey, I will take all, I think there was 45 of them, I think is the number that I remember, women under my wing, and I will defend them. And and the character's never named, but there's a member of Drogo's like immediate guard almost, who is having a really big problem with this, and Drogo takes big personal offense because this person is speaking up against his moon, his love, his everything, basically the person who is fathering his child, which is what he really cares about ultimately. And Drogo rips his fucking throat out, dude.
It's sick. It's so cool.
Brutal. Like, literally, I wrote down in my notes, Drogo rips a man's throat out. Like, he has a huge problem with this, and it is so gore. It is so, I mean, obviously every violent scene in this is very brutal, but it is, oh man. But yeah, I think there's one more thing I'll talk about. There's two more things. I have one note in here that just says Hodor's packing heat. We have the scene under the tree, and Hodor, just totally random, where Hodor runs up, it's just meats flapping everywhere, and I'm like, this was the most unnecessary scene of all. Like, I should say, Hodor running up butt ass naked part of the scene was so unbelievably unnecessary, but it was so funny.
That's the point.
Yeah, no, it is. Well, because Hodor is obviously
Oh.
mentally challenged. That's a
Yeah.
part of the story, like his character. And I feel like this is a representation and them furthering that narrative of Hodor is very mentally challenged. But I literally just have in my notes like Hodor's packing heat. And then I have one more.
I remember seeing that scene for the first time, just going, that's Hodor's Hodor. I can't like not see that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I have one more thing that I want to talk about because I mean, again, very dense episode, but the last thing I want to talk about is Sir Bannister, or I believe I'm saying that right.
Barristan Selmy.
Barristan, yeah. He is demoted, and I think, and it's very heavily implied that the reason why is because he kind of stood up for Ned in a way when Ned was denouncing Joffrey as the king, and obviously the queen cannot trust people who are going to question Joffrey in any way. So Barristan is the head of the guard and he gets fired. And it's a very dramatic scene where Barristan's literally like ripping off his uniform and is like, I don't want to serve you, essentially. Like I have given my entire everything, my life, my blood, my sweat to this family, to this kingdom, and if you're gonna do me like this, like I don't want any part of this. And it's funny because he pulls out his sword. I'm gonna be honest, I thought he was going to kill himself. I thought the reason he pulled out his sword was to kill himself. But no, he pulls out his sword to throw it at Joffrey's feet. And he says something along the lines of, melt this down with the rest of them. And then storms out. Not before the other guardsmen. He makes a very funny remark where the other guardsmen like all pull out their swords because they're afraid that he's going to attack disgruntledly. And he's like, even at this age, I could take you all like it was nothing. Throws the sword down and then storms out. And I really want to see more of his character because he's another one of my favorite characters. We don't get a lot of him, but he is very much one of those characters where he doesn't really have a family in a way that the others have families that they're loyal to. He has a different like sense of loyalty, and now that loyalty, the only like loyalty that he had to anyone or any house has been severed. And I want to see where that character goes, because I think he's a super cool like. Again, he is very much just there to protect the king, whoever that might be, and now he's a man without a purpose. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where that story goes.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Carson, tell me, where are you at in One Piece?
I have finished the first
One Piece
saga. I have finished One Piece in a
all
week.
of One Piece.
My God, I bet you there is somebody. Is it even actually possible to finish it in a week? Like if you genuinely sat down.
So it's possible. So I believe it's possible to read all of One Piece in a week, depending on your reading speed. In terms of watching One Piece, it is physically impossible. I believe One Piece is 12 consecutive days worth of content, if I remember correctly, and obviously ongoing. It might even be longer than that. But I remember seeing it's about 12 or more days of continuous watch time. So the shortest amount of time would be that 12 days. I think I said weeks. It's 12 days. So about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. So no, it is not possible. But anyways, you have finished the East Blue Saga.
I have finished the East Blue Saga, so that should be all the way through episode 61 if you're watching it on Netflix, or I don't know how it's broken up anywhere differently. And I will say this. I want to start off by saying Grandpa Rio. I sat there going, what? Grandpa Rio? Why can't it just be Rio? Grandpa? It's just one of those funny moments. Like I love how some animes will name characters just like they're not random, but like I'm just like, why this part's unnecessary? Why Grandpa? And anytime that name kept coming up, I was like, oh, it's such an emotional scene, but I'm laughing so hard because it's that name. No, I just wanted to throw that out there as like a commentary joke. But starting it off, I think the thing that I loved about ending the saga is we finally got to see the crew all together, working all together. I know that we still kind of had that in Arlong Park, they were all working together, but it was technically Nami's origin story. It was wrapping up the loose ends of origin stories. Now they're really all together. They're all after the same goal. They are all a crew.
This is one thing I will note with that. It's an interesting comment. One thing that I love about One Piece is they're all there for the same goal of making Luffy the king of the pirates. Yes. But they are also still, and I think you've seen this scene. If I say the barrel scene, do you know what I'm talking about?
The barrels, I believe so. I can say this much. Furthering your point, the final scene of the East Blue Saga is there. Oh God, I don't know what it's called. It's like the interconnected point before they go down out into the Grand Line. Like they're
on the red line. They're on the red line. Ready to cross into the Grand Line.
The final scene is they're going down it, and then they're finally out, and then you cut to each of the characters. It's like the last 2 minutes of the episode. You cut to the each character's face, and one's saying to do this and to do this and to do this, and then Luffy has this whole like 2 extra lines of dialogue saying this with my crew, and I'm gonna find the One Piece. It's here. They're all working together to get Luffy to that One Piece, but they all have different goals in mind. So I'm just
secondary motivations. Yeah.
Secondary.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the point that I was getting.
Yeah.
Because Sanji wants to find the East Blue. Nami wants to be basically filthy rich. That's like her entire. Usopp wants to be a brave warrior of the sea, and Luffy wants to be king of the pirates. That's the goal of those crew members. But they are also. Well, Sanji's is to find the East Blue. Sanji's is to find the East Blue, which is the point in which all of the seas come together, where it's supposed to have every fish from every ocean. That's Sanji's goal.
Gotcha. Okay,
his main goal, other than making Luffy king of the pirates.
I kept forgetting that because, like, as you were actually listing it off, I was like, oh yeah. So Zoro said, "Yeah, I want to be the best swordsman."
Strongest swordman. That's the one I forgot. Yeah, Zoro wants to be the strongest swordsman.
Nami actually, she doesn't say she wants to find all the treasure, but she specifically says to map.
Sorry, I was right. She wants to map the entire world. That's right.
Entire world.
She wants to write the most detailed map of the entire world while also becoming filthy rich.
Yeah, and Usopp, you were dead on. It's I want to be a brave warrior, and I look at Usopp and go, "Good luck, buddy." Okay, you got a long way to get there. But no, I think the thing that I loved about this, like I said, was that it is the crew all together. They all are working together, and it's funny enough. My least favorite arc of the East Blue Saga is the first one where they're all together, but it's also because they're technically not, because they pull up to this quote unquote shopping center where the Marines are all at, and
that's all the Lounge Town arc.
Yeah. But they're all separated, and it's each episode you cut to like each individual character, what they're doing in that moment. So you cut to Zoro, he's getting 2 more swords because obviously he lost the other 2 swords that he had. And then you cut to Sanji, and he ends up being, correct me if I'm wrong, he's in a cooking competition. I was trying to understand. That's what I thought. He's in a cooking competition.
So he gets challenged by someone who is basically touting themselves as the best chef in the One Piece world. And that is the entire Sanji arc of the Lounge Town arc. Yeah. And then you Sanji in a cooking competition.
But it's even more awkward because Nami and Usopp don't get their own like individual episodes. They both get the same episode, and Nami doesn't do anything. It's about Usopp's father, and I'm like, what? Where's the Nami love? What the heck? Why not give her anything?
Hey! Yeah, Yasopp, don't disrespect Yasopp like that. His dad, Usopp's dad, Yasopp.
I know, I love that. I thought it was great. But then you cut like I think the funniest part about it all is they're all separated. And you never get to Luffy's like point of destination. All you get is him running, and he's like, "I gotta get to the grave. I'm gonna get there."
Well, it's not a grave. It's specifically the execution point of Goldie Roger. Yeah, the execution platform of Goldie Roger. Yeah,
that's what I'm sorry, not the grave. The execution platform. And I'm just like, okay, are we ever gonna see the execution platform? No, we're going to wait 3 more episodes and then do it. I'm like, okay, which kind of furthers my point of it didn't drag, but I understand why last week you did make the point of, hey, we might want to talk about you switching to One Piece at some point. Cause I'm like, okay, there's some stuff where I'm like, this all could have been one episode. It didn't have to all be like separate thing. I'm happy that it was because I got more time with it. And I got to build over things. But I'm like, I wish it could have all been the same episode because it ended up being pointless for the overall story beyond, okay, it's setting up the Marines as a threat.
Yeah.
Which I want to talk about this. My least favorite episode of the East Blue arc has nothing to do with the crew. All it is Bozo the Clown's crew picking a new leader, and I'm like, this doesn't, like, why? I don't need to see, like, okay, I guess it's cool.
So you're talking about Buggy the Clown.
Buggy, not
Buggy
Bozo.
the Clown is he is a fan favorite character. He's actually one of the most loved characters in all of One Piece.
He's and funny. I'll give him that.
Yeah. I will say a lot of the scenes with him don't feel like they matter all that much, and they don't, admittedly. Until later on, I should say. Okay. It all builds as a part of his. It doesn't build a story. It builds his character. Sure. So it does, and this is why I feel like it doesn't matter, is it doesn't feel like it builds the story as a whole all that much, but it builds his character to where he is or will be later on in the story.
Gotcha.
Not to spoil too much, but yeah, where he will be later
honestly, that's good to know, because I do feel like, we'll cut to another thing. One of the, I almost feel like, I get that it's a saga, but the East Blue saga, I feel like there's an episode before Buggy's episode where they're all on the boat, the main crew, and it's basically Nami looking around at everybody, and it's a big flashback episode. I know you also mentioned that last week, because there's gonna be a lot of episodes where we cut back sometimes unnecessarily, and I feel like that whole episode I'm just like, okay, like, I love seeing where they're at now, but like, why now? It's only been this many episodes and they're all 22 minutes. It's not like it's that hard, especially because some of them also was Arlong Park flashbacks. I'm like, we were just there. Why have any of this?
So I think we might want to go ahead and switch you to One Piece then, because again, that's only going to get worse. We'll talk about that after this episode. Yeah. But I will explain the reason. So the reason why One Piece has, and honestly, a lot of anime of the time, is the way that anime used to work, and to a degree still does, but not to as extreme, is it will release while the manga is releasing. But a typical episode of anime covers about 3 to 4 chapters worth of anime, of the manga. Now, One Piece has been released at a bunch of different paces, but I believe back when it was originally released, it was weekly. So if you can imagine, it would take 3 weeks of the manga to release to make 1 episode of the anime. So they have to drag on the episodes back then because they were releasing it in tandem to a degree. And that's why the pacing, it even gets worse at points, because Oda would take breaks from writing, but the anime would continue. So they have to pad it out even more. And then they start covering, there's points where they cover 1 chapter per episode, and you're like, man, this is dragging forever. Because when you read like 1 chapter of manga, it's pretty quick. There's not like a ton that happens in just a single chapter. So that's kind of why, especially with things like One Piece and Naruto, you have that filler, whether it be a filler episode that's not canon or filler to extend the show. Because again, if your plan is to take 3 chapters of the manga and turn it into 1 episode of the anime, and you're releasing at the same time, well, the manga is releasing weekly, the anime is releasing weekly, but that's a 3-to-1 ratio that just does not work. So you have to find a way to drag that on. It doesn't necessarily make it forgivable, and that's one of the reasons why now that they're so far into the story, they're doing a remake, and you have fan things like One Piece, which I don't think I've told you exactly what One Piece is, but One Piece is a fan project that has taken all of the episodes of One Piece that have been released and cut it down to that 3 chapter per episode pacing. So they cut out those unnecessary flashbacks, those unnecessary drawn out scenes, and make it to where it would feel like it would be if they waited longer and released it as a normal anime typically is. Very similar to, it's probably going to be very similar pacing to what the One Piece remake is going to be. But yeah, that's long-winded explanation of that.
No, and I'm glad you explained that. But again, I don't think any of this is bad. I actually I should preface that because I never really said that. I don't think any of this is bad by any means. I just feel like a lot of it was to a degree. Some of it was unnecessary. Now with Buggy, okay, maybe later on that'll come back, whatever. But like everything that they did with the flashback episode specifically, I'm like, okay, we just saw this. I don't really think this is necessary right now. It's cool to see it, and like, I'm not gonna lie, I got emotional at some points because, oh wow, to see where all these characters have come at this point, I was like, okay, that's really cool, but we just saw it, so I didn't get that full emotional weight and value to it that I wish I would have gotten because of that. So anyway, at the end of the day, I think even though it's my least favorite arc with them being in the shopping center, I think the biggest thing that it did was build up the Marines because they are, unless you can tell me something different, they are the biggest threat to
up until this point. Yes,
up until this point, they are the biggest threat. So it was necessary to build them, and I like that we had that. And so I appreciate the arc for what it did with that.
Yeah, because this is the first time that you kind of get an idea of the hierarchy to a bigger degree, because one of my favorite characters in One Piece gets introduced in the Loungetown arc, which is Smoker, who is a Marine captain at the time. Amazingly cool devil fruit, amazingly cool devil fruit, like cool devil fruit character design. Voice is awesome. I love that voice actor's work. Yeah, Smoker is an all-time like top character.
No, he was really good. No, they did a good job of that.
Well, you also get another thing where you find out a little bit more. I'm not going to spoil any. Well, I will. I'll let you talk about it, though. I'll hint at it. You get a little bit more into Luffy than you kind of expected you would. I would expect.
Yeah. No,
you find out a little bit of little piece of his backstory. I'll say
a little bit. No, yeah. You do, and this I was going to bring it up when you find out. What you find out about Luffy, it made his character better personally for me. I actually feel like I can't rank the characters anymore. I can't do it. I'm like, now I'm at the point where it's like all of them are genuinely all really good. And again, when I keep coming back to this final scene of the East Blue Saga, I got to that moment, not just excited for the future, but like, wow, oh my God, why are all these characters so good? Like, it's a rarity that you like, okay, I know it's one of your favorite shows. Let's use Arrow as an example. Arrow, sometimes you look at the show, and it's not it is an ensemble show, but like, okay, Oliver Queen is clearly the best character because he has the biggest character arc. You love Diggle, you love Felicity, but there are some characters in that show you look at and go, you're not as developed as this character. You're fun, but I prefer these characters more. I don't feel that with One Piece. I don't. Like, I genuinely feel like all these characters are really, really good. And so that's why this is furthering along my point, when you get to the Grandpa Rio story and they're all once again working towards the goal of, which is, okay, this girl, all she wants is to help her, oh my God, her Grandpa Rio. I can't not think about it and how awkward. It's a dragon. It's not her grandpa. And it's so weird when I say it like that, but all they're trying to do is work together, get this dragon back home where he wants to be. And it really shows how sweet of a show this is, and how it takes its time in setting up its story and building its characters over time. And now we're at this focal point of, okay, let's all work together in tandem. Let's accomplish this goal. Let's help other people, which is really, really unique, and it's really, really cool. And so I think I don't know, at the end of the day, I love this show. I think it's great. I really don't have anything negative to say about it beyond the few things that I've like touched on, which I also add, they're minor things. It's not like these are any major things. It's all still good. I'm excited to see where this story goes because I really don't know where it can right now. And that's my favorite thing with a television show, is not knowing where it goes. But speaking of our weekly check-in with televisions, that's actually part of our topic, our main topic, which is continuing our ranking with part 2, TV show edition. So, Brandon, I'm going to let you kick this off. For those that listened last week, we ranked our top 5 movies. This week, we're doing television shows. The way this works is I'll let my friend Brandon start, then it'll go to me, back to Brandon, and we'll talk a little bit about these shows over the course of it. So, Brandon, while we're at this, what is your 5th favorite show of all time?
So, okay, before I get into my 5th favorite show of all time, I'm going to make a quick honorable mention like I did last week. And this honorable mention is not going to surprise you at all, but it might surprise anyone else because it's going to be such an off-the-cuff, weird honorable mention. And to be totally honest with you, it was on my list at one point while I was building this out, very briefly, but it was on my list, and that's Hannah Montana.
I knew that would be on there.
Okay.
Gosh darn you.
So it's not on my list. It's an honorable mention. But I want to honorably mention this real quick by saying one of the ways that I built out this list is a lot of this is going to be pretty obvious shows. Most of which, or some of which I should say, I've already spoken about. But Hannah Montana is a show that as a kid meant so much to me, and that's where I built out this list. Is not only just these aren't the best shows of all time necessarily, but they mean a lot to me. And Hannah Montana is one where I grew up with, I have 3 sisters, and I was forced to watch a lot of girly things growing up. I've seen every original Barbie movie that's ever been released. I've watched Barbie Life in the Dream House. I've seen Polly Pocket. I've seen all these girly things. Hannah Montana is one of those girly things that I actually went out of my way to watch without my sisters. I have this memory of me sitting down with my cousin watching when they released the final episode of Hannah Montana. They did a marathon of every single episode, and I sat down and I watched that marathon with a cousin of mine who was also a dude my age. And yeah, I won't talk about it much more because it's an honorable mention, but like it is a show that means a lot to me. In a way that a lot of people probably won't understand. But switching to what is actually my 5th favorite show of all time, and it is the first anime I have ever watched. And that is Beyblade Metal Fusion. For those of you who don't know what Beyblades are, stop watching our podcast. You're not the correct type of nerd. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Please leave. You know where the door is.
Yeah, but Beyblade Metal Fusion is what it is. The Pokemon anime is to what the Pokemon trading card game is, essentially, where back in the early 90s and the early 2000s, you had a lot of shows that were based just to kind of sell toys. Beyblades being the Beyblades, Pokemon being to sell plushies and Pokemon cards. You have Yu-Gi-Oh! Also based on the card game. I could probably list more. You have Digimon, that's another one. All these are very much based off of like toy properties to sell things. But Beyblade Metal Fusion was definitively my first ever anime that I have ever watched as a kid. I should preface, I've only seen the first 57 episodes or 56. Because technically there are a bunch of other, there's a very specific reason. This show means so much to me, being my first ever anime, that much later down the line, or I guess not much later down the line, they started kind of these 56, I believe, episodes end. It is the end of the story. You have the story with Pegasus, of the Beyblade Pegasus, and Jinka, the owner of Pegasus. And that story ends. To me, it felt conclusive, and that's why I've never felt the need to continue watching. But it is a very simple story. It is a story of a boy named Kenta, or 2 boys technically. You have Kenta and Jinga. They are traveling through the Beyblade world trying to become the strongest. Again, very, very simple. You have your generic anime tropes of having tournament arcs and things like that. It is... I'm trying to... First of all, it has the most iconic theme song opener of all time, in my opinion. Beyblades, Beyblades, let it rip. Let's fight an epic battle. Like, it is, I was actually, in preparation when I was writing a bunch of stuff down, I threw on the first, I didn't finish rewatching it, but I did throw on the first episode again, just for, and when that song came on, oh man, the nostalgia waves that I got hit with are insane. But again, this was very much a story about Kenta and Jinga, mainly Jinga. Jinga is the main character of he is the owner of Pegasus, the Beyblade. And one thing that I feel like I connected with this show so much with is they humanize the Beyblades. And they don't do that by making them humans or they don't talk, they don't do any of this, but the Beyblades feel like characters. So you're not just having Jinka say, like, Jinka's the one who's talking, he's going through everything, but then you also have Pegasus, who has emotion to him as literally a Beyblade, which is a toy. It is basically a weaponized spinning top. And they have really cool power system also, because Beyblade's the toy. I love Beyblade's the toy. I still own Beyblades, like physical Beyblades. I have a lot of the ones from the TV show. Rock Leone being one of them that I love. He is a stamina type. And that's kind of what my point is going to be is, in my opinion, it has a very unique power system. So the way that the powers work is you have your Beyblades, and you would think that it would just be Beyblades with magical abilities or whatever, but it's not. Think of it kind of like Pokemon, but more broken down and technical. So each Pokemon each Beyblade has different components to it. You have your tip, you have your base, you have your I don't know, I can't remember what it's called, but I'm gonna call it the shaft. You have different elements that build up a Beyblade, and granted, you have your main Beyblades, which are just a solid character. Like, sure. I brought up Pegasus, I've brought up Rock Leone, there's Sagittarius, which is Kenta's main Beyblade. Sure. There's so many different Beyblades, and the way that the power system works is all of their magical abilities that the Beyblades do have are based on the pieces of the Beyblade. So Rock Leone's has a wider and more sturdy base. So he is a stamina type to a degree, where he is a sit-in-place type of Beyblade, more than an attack type like Pegasus or Sagittarius will be, where they have a more narrow tip. And that plays into how they battle with, like, Rock Leone has this tornado attack, which is because he sits there and spins really, really fast in one place, which brings the wind up. And it feels, as a dumb child, it felt logical, where I was like, oh yeah, he's sitting there and he's spinning really, really fast. You have Capricorn, who is a goat. That's another thing. All of them are based on constellations. All the Beyblades are kind of based on either like constellations or some degree. So you have Capricorn. Capricorn is another Beyblade that I actually own. It has a slanted tip, and it is a Billy goat, and so and it is able to hop up and attack from the top and attack from the sides, and it's just a very interesting, like, and again, unique power system that's based on the elements of the Beyblades while also having other connotations to it. And the story that it tells, again, is very simple. It's very similar to Pokemon in the sense of, I want to be the strongest Beyblade master or whatever, and it's them fighting through challenges. Like, there's evil organizations and evil individuals and making allies and things like that. But yeah, that is my fifth favorite show that I have on my list. So I'll kick it off to you, Carson. What is your number 5?
So, honorable mention. I'm going to give myself an honorable mention because I really like that you're doing that. And I can't think of anything better than How I Met Your Mother. It's my favorite sitcom of all time. I think it has a lot of heart. It's very funny. It's a bit of a comfort show for me. I think, I love all the shows on this list, but a lot of these shows are, in a lot of ways, a hard watch, meaning you can't just sit down or put it on the background while you're watching. Like, How I Met Your Mother is one of those shows that I can just put on in the background and I can enjoy. It doesn't matter what season it is, what episode it is. I'll watch it because it's fun and the characters are good. The story is good. So I think for sure that is my honorable mention. I hate that ending. I think everybody in the world hates that ending. It's not just me. But no, I really do appreciate what that show is, and it is truly a great show. But it is my favorite sitcom, and I think that absolutely deserves to be an honorable mention. But my fifth show of all time, is actually the show Better Call Saul, which is the sequel show to Breaking Bad. And I think that this show is, I mean, honest to God, all of these shows except one of them, and we'll get to which one that is. I think every show on this top 5 list is perfect down to a T, and I think that Better Call Saul is no exception to that rule. I think it's perfect. I think its world is very well done. Vince Gilligan crafting the character of Saul in a continuation format from Breaking Bad. We get to see who he was before he took on the persona of Saul Goodman, before he became the dirty lawyer that we know and love from the show. It has the hard task of taking the character that was just the comedic relief and then turning him into this incredibly complex character, which is so cool. And I don't think would have worked with any other character. And yeah, we have other characters from the show that pop in and out. Like we have Mike Ehrmantraut pops into the show. He's basically a co-lead with Saul. We learn more about his past and how he came in to the story with Gus Fring. We get newer characters like Howard and Nacho and Kim Wexler. The show itself is, from a writing standpoint, is genius. I think its writing is probably better than Breaking Bad. The characters are so well written, and they each line is so intentional and so purposeful that it truly invites you in as an audience member, and you get sucked up and lost in this world of watching Saul become the person, or Jimmy McGill become the Saul Goodman that we know and love from Breaking Bad. And, you know, as much as this is a prequel show, it also cuts forward to the events after Breaking Bad, and it wants to give an ending to the character that kind of had an open ending part of the show, which is what happens with Saul? Where does he end up? And it shows you the aftermath of how, like, you know, Saul stands there. You know, he's a great lawyer. You know, he absolutely is. And, you know, he's facing all of these years and he's facing all of this trial. And it eventually gets to the point, he gets the judges down to, you know, we're going to have this many years. He's admitted to all this. Great. This and done. And in the last second, he goes, yeah, you know, all that stuff I said? Yeah, no, it's a bold-faced lie. I'm Saul Goodman, and I did all these things. All these bad things that have happened in the events of Breaking Bad. Yeah, no, they just couldn't have happened without me. And it's such an emotional ending. It's a roller coaster of a ride. I will say this. It is my 5th favorite show of all time. I would never make another person watch it without watching Breaking Bad, because it is very much a love letter to that show. It very much complements that show. I do not think that you could actually watch the show without watching Breaking Bad. I mean, you can. It will not nearly be as good, and you will not get the same nuances or small character moments. You will not get as many of them until you watch Breaking Bad. But I think it's pretty much perfect in every aspect, and that's why it's my 5th favorite of all time. I love it to death.
Fair enough. Well, with that, my 4th favorite show of all time is Sherlock. BBC's Sherlock show. You have this is Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock and Martin Freeman as his second. Why am I forgetting his name right now? Holmes. Thank you. No, it's not Holmes, because it's Sherlock Holmes.
It's Watson. It's Watson, you moron. I was trying to trip you up.
Wow, thank you. It's funny because I was looking up a bunch of stuff about this show to remember, because it is one of my favorites, but it's been a while since I've seen it. But I love the way that this show makes you think. I remember watching this, and I've only seen this show once, but I will say the only reason I've only seen this show once is because when I originally watched it, it was on Netflix, and then they took it down off of Netflix I was so upset when they did. And it was, I don't know where it is right now. It might be back on Netflix, but each episode is like its own movie. They're each like an hour and a half or more long, and it is classic Sherlock Holmes and Watson shenanigans, but told in like, so you have your Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, which I enjoy, but no one plays a better Sherlock Holmes than Benedict Cumberbatch, in my opinion. His performance and emotion, and Sherlock Holmes, I don't know a bunch about the mythology of Sherlock Holmes, but it's very clear that he's autistic. And someone who is autistic themselves, it tells that type, like, Sherlock Holmes is a menace while also having heart, while also being a super genius. And I just love the fact that we get to see his character growth of being a solo, just like not even really crime solver, but he like does work for the police station just for fun. And then he meets Watson, and finally they go into the business together because Watson, obviously, he was ex-military. He is a very genius doctor, something Sherlock Holmes isn't. Even though Sherlock Holmes is a know-it-all, like he's very, very intelligent, he accepts his shortcomings to a degree, and where he brings in Watson as kind of that second pair of eyes. And this story is, again, it's very episodic. It's similar to Pirates of the Caribbean, where I feel like you can sit down and watch every single one of these episodes as a one-off, like almost like a movie, but then it still tells an interconnecting story throughout all of it. Have you seen, I should have asked, have you seen the Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman Sherlock Holmes?
So I actually started the show. This was when I was like really heavily into Doctor Who. I started it and I never finished it because funny enough, and maybe I'm wrong. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I always thought it was way too dark for when I was a kid, and like I never really could get through it.
As a kid, like, I don't know what you're talking about as a kid. I think I watched this show at like 15, 16, probably, if I remember correctly. And I loved it. It is a very dark show. It is a very brutal show. You have dead bodies everywhere. I mean, every single episode he's solving a murder or another type of crime. One of the scenes, and this is one of the scenes that really encapsulates kind of how arrogant but also intelligent that Sherlock Holmes is. Like, there's a scene where there is a person who's been kidnapped, and they're basically teasing Sherlock, and they're kind of taunting him, and what Sherlock has to do in order to free this child who's been kidnapped is prove that a piece of art is a forgery. It is a test of Sherlock's intelligence. And he is given like, I think it's like 60 seconds, if I remember correctly, to figure out how this painting is a forgery. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that leads up to this, but this is the magnum opus of the episode, is prove that this is a forgery. And Sherlock takes like one look at the painting. He's like panicked. He's like, this little girl who's been kidnapped is literally doing a countdown, basically to her death. Like, if Sherlock doesn't prove this, the girl dies. And Sherlock solves it really, really quickly. But then he kind of takes a moment to be proud of himself before he, like, this little girl is counting down, terrified. Like, you can hear the fear and shaking in her voice. But Sherlock takes a moment to be like, man, I'm really smart. This is so genius. Like, I can't believe I didn't realize this. And all it was there's a star in the painting that wasn't actually like discovered at the time that the painting was made. And it's like, that is something that only Sherlock would realize. And it shows both his arrogance in the sense of this girl's about to die, but he takes a moment to pat himself on the back. But it also shows his genius of no one else could have solved this, because it was literally just a single dot of paint that represents a that did not get discovered until way after the painting was made. And they have a big like plot thread throughout this entire show is Sherlock and his brother, kind of Moriarty, playing like a game of chess, in the sense of Moriarty's jealous of Sherlock, and Sherlock is kind of doesn't care, and Moriarty's also like super, super intelligent. So it's a battle of the greats. I'm not gonna like get too into spoilers for your sake, because I really want you to watch it. But watching that game of chess of them outsmarting each other, the two in this world, the smartest people that exist, playing games with each other and going basically blow for blow on an intellectual level is just such an interesting character study. This is Benedict Cumberbatch's best performance in my opinion. It is unlike anything he's ever done before. And that is, again, the way he portrays an autistic person who's super intelligent, super hyper focused, who's a drug addict as well. Sherlock Holmes is notoriously a drug addict. It helps him cope with his hyper intelligence. And you get him solving mysteries, but you also get a human character story of Sherlock struggling with drug addiction and struggling with all of what his intelligence has brought him, these enemies that he's made, these mysteries that he has to solve. It is an amazing show. So I'll kick it off, but I'll go ahead and kick it off to you for your number 4.
Yeah. No, I've seen bits of Sherlock, and again, for some reason, it's like one of the only shows that reels just keep coming up across like YouTube or Instagram. It's just constant. I'm like, but I don't watch the show. Why is it? All right, it's a good scene. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my number 4, and it's unfortunate, I can't really talk much about my number 4 because it's obviously Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So keeping it brief because we've already talked a lot about it. And because I want to make sure whenever you're done with the show officially, we can have like a big discussion about it.
Yeah, that'll be the topic of the episode when I finish Game of Thrones. Will be similar with when you finish One Piece. We'll make like a dedicated episode.
Game of Thrones, to me is, if it was just the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, this would be number 1 on my list. I think those first 4 seasons are perfect. I think that the world building, the characters, the storylines, how it takes its time, how it's not afraid to take its time to building the story. The action scenes are used very sparingly, and when they're there, they are friggin' awesome. The shocking twists and betrayals, the twists, the turns. We've talked a lot about that over the past few episodes. It's just so well done. And adapting George R.R. Martin's story, I think that the creators did a great job bringing it to life, bringing this world to life. And also because it's HBO, and to its credit, even though I complain all the time about how stuff can be needless, HBO is the perfect place to put this show on because you can do whatever you want. You can tell the full story and not have any remorse for telling the full story, which George R.R. Martin.
You can have Hodor's dick flopping around. You can have heads getting chopped off. You can,
and that's very true to the Game of Thrones lore. It doesn't hold back in the book, so why should the show? And I think that they do a great job adapting it. I think if I'm pushing territory into seasons 5 through 7, not the best, but they are very strongly good, and I think that they're really good and fun to watch. But that's when they start to have like a rocky downturn, and then you get to season 8, which again, we'll talk about this more in depth within the next few months. But season 8, I like the first half of it. I think it's the second half in which I'm like, I'm done. I'm checked out. You ruined everything. I hate you, creators of Game of Thrones. But I think the thing I want to point out with Game of Thrones is that even though it has those final few episodes, I still rewatch it all the time. And it's still my 4th favorite. I think it truly is a masterclass in practical sets and costumes, acting, performances, all of it, action. They do such a good job with it. And so I don't want to talk anymore about it because I don't know what I can touch on it and what I can and what I can't touch on. But I love the show to death. It's my number 4. It's perfect in a lot of regards. It's imperfect in a lot of other regards. But one thing that I can't deny is that it is my 4th favorite. I love it.
Fair enough.
Number three, Brandon, hit us off. What do we got?
Okay. So my number 3, honestly, this was the hardest slot to fill. My number 2 and number 1 were pretty locked in from when I started, but my number 3 slot, like Sherlock was one that really didn't leave the list. Beyblade's one that came in a little later. But my number 3 slot was admittedly my hardest, not because I don't love this show, but because there's so many shows that I love, and I honestly kind of had to iron it out and iron down to think about it, which show. Like I'll give another honorable mention here. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is one. There's a reason this one isn't on my list, and that's because I have not completed it. Now, completing it doesn't necessarily have to be a pretenser to me doing it, but I don't feel like I can comfortably say like it is my favorite of all time. The reason it means so much to me is because it's the only show that I have watched week to week with my dad. But that is enough about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. since it's not my number 3. My actual number 3 is Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars: The Clone Wars is one of the best pieces of animated fiction of all time. It is an unbelievably beautiful show, especially in the later seasons, obviously, since it was an early 2000s show. Watching Anakin, watching Anakin be humanized in a way that makes you it makes you appreciate typically prequels, the whole point of it obviously is to make you appreciate certain aspects of a series or a movie or whatever it might be, but typically you never get a TV series that is as long running as Clone Wars to tell a story of not just a single character, but many characters, obviously. But really, all the Clone Wars is to give more context to why Anakin later becomes Darth Vader, while also telling a story that you've never seen before in the Star Wars universe of Ahsoka's story. Ahsoka is one of the best characters in all of fiction ever written, in my opinion. Watching her journey from Snips all the way back in the beginning, where she is just a child that Anakin is mentoring, to the first ever gray Jedi that we've ever seen on screen, because she has a conflict of morality in the sense of, I don't believe the Jedi are all right, but I also don't believe the dark side is all right. I cannot grapple with the good versus evil. She doesn't believe in the black and white. That's why she is a gray Jedi. Or Jedi is technically the wrong word, since Jedi is very much a term for the good side, for the light side of the Force. But that's kind of how they're referred to. Is I think there's another term, but how I know them is Gray Jedi. But watching her, so I have cried so many times. Again, especially when they announced that they were bringing it back for a final season. That was one of the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. And when you want to talk about beat for beat, one of the best seasons of TV that's ever been released, that final season of Clone Wars is perfection. I don't think there's a bad episode of that. But leading up to it, you also have, it is not a perfect TV show with every single episode being perfect, but it has some of the best episodes where you're getting to see, again, Ahsoka's story, Obi-Wan's story. You're getting more about Obi-Wan Kenobi, who, again, in the original movies, now granted, in the prequels, you do get some of Anakin's story and some of Obi-Wan's story, but you're fleshing out, you see that Obi-Wan has a love. Obi-Wan fell in love, which is a big no-no for the Jedi. You're humanizing him in that way, where you see this perfect character of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who almost failed the Jedi because he fell in love. And you're seeing another return of Ray Park, who he is Darth Maul, but you have a different person who voices, I'm trying to remember his name, it's slipping my mind, but in the animated series you see the return of Darth Maul, who is one of the best villains of he is one of the best villains of all time, in my opinion, just because of his return. He is a very one-off character in the prequels, being cut in half by, just as a means to an end, to cut in half.
Two lines also, I want to point out. He has two lines in that original movie.
Yeah, exactly. He has 2 lines, but he was kind of a fan favorite. He was such a cool design. He was such a cool character with Ray Park's performance. But then we cut back and see his kind of an origin story in a way, because he really restarts when he gets cut in half. Now, he doesn't become good, but he doesn't necessarily go back just to the Jedi. He kind of, again, falls in a weird, not as much of a gray area as Ahsoka does, but he begins to ask a lot more questions, and you get dedicated, not just episode, but episodes of Darth Maul that fleshes him out. And it's, again, it's such a deep dive into the world of Star Wars, where I have read some of the books, I've read some of the comic books, so I have a little bit more of an idea, but the depth that they go to in Clone Wars and the emotions that it really brings up in you, watching those final scenes with Ahsoka and Anakin, and mainly Ahsoka with the clones during Order 66 in that last few episodes, I sobbed so hard with the just gut-wrenching. All these clones are dying, they're killing each other to a degree, because and that's the other thing. Order 66 is talked about way before it actually happens in Clone Wars, because they find there's the whole stories with the clones that are malfunctioning, and you're kind of getting those hints that in the movies it's very much just we find out about the clones, they're evil, boom, like evil, they're programmed. But in Clone Wars, you're humanizing the clones, because that is the other characters. You have Rex, and you have all these clones that are these cannon fodder in the movies, essentially. And you're actually getting to experience what it's like to fight alongside of them, and giving them names and giving them personalities to, again, essentially what was cannon fodder in the movies. And that is unbelievably well executed. Again, it makes you feel things that I just reminisces with me so much of again, I'm going to talk about it forever. It's humans. It's humanizing these characters. It's I know I sound like a broken record, and I'm going to sound like a broken record for the entirety of this podcast that it runs, but I love human stories, and I love humanizing things that aren't seen as human. They experience racism, essentially, being these other beings, being not human. And it, again, it's allowed to tell so many different stories, being a TV show that runs for so long. So yeah, that is Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
No, I love Clone Wars. I think that it is truly one of the best animated projects I think ever invented. So I'm not surprised it's on there. I'm actually surprised it's not higher. But
when you hear my top 2, it'll make sense. But again, sure. I grappled with this one.
So my number 3 is one that I've talked about very briefly with you. I actually don't think if I say this name, you might never remember what this is about. This is a very recent show that came out. It came out in 2018. It's called Succession. Succession tells the story.
I've definitely heard of it. Yep.
I know you've heard of it.
Never seen it, and don't know much about it. But
yeah, a lot of these shows that are on my list are HBO shows, because HBO is really good at their job. But Succession tells the story of this family, specifically of the 4 kids in this family, as they're all in a power struggle for their father's business. They are all horrible people. They all suck. I want you to actually take Joffrey, for example, and then divide it by 4. They're all horrible people. They are the absolute worst. And you come to understand why they are the way they are, because of the negligent father they have, and the absolute narcissistic person that he was, but also how their mother also wasn't really around, and how she was a horrible person too, and how everybody in the show is only after one goal, which is themselves. Nobody truly cares about anybody else in this show. At least that's what it starts out as, and you build over time, and you see relationships build, you see things build, and there are some people who do care about others, but at the end of the day, everybody's only truly ever there for themselves. They're never, just because they're siblings, that means nothing. They don't care about each other. What Succession does so well, and this is what separates it from all these other shows, is how do we take these characters who are absolute dicks and make the audience love them and feel for them and care for them. And they do it in such a unique and creative way. When I watched Succession for the first time, it was the only show I've ever watched, which I knew nothing about. I just knew it was like a really good show. Specifically, I started watching it in its 3rd season. When its 3rd season had wrapped filming, I started watching it, and I fell in love with this character in these characters in this world. And I felt for the characters that are in the show too. I think its writing is outstanding. It deserved every award that it got. I think that from a writing standpoint, it is the most intellectual show that I've ever heard in my entire life. And at the same time, this is a show that literally one of the characters walks into a room and it's a big important meeting and goes, I just wanted to come in and say, yo, what's up? And I'm like, what? But it's so good. And like they do, the writers did such a good job crafting the story beats and the characters. Like I can't say more than that, because that's truly what it is. At the end of the show, you yourself, you said you love very human stories. This is a very human story. And one of the kids has a massive drug addiction, which plays into the story. One is a massive narcissistic, terrible personality, which he gets from his father. The daughter was never really loved by her father, and then the oldest son was always neglected because it reminded the father of a past that he really wanted to leave behind. And you see why the kids are the way that they are. And then I want to talk about really quickly Brian Cox's Logan Roy. That is probably the best performance of the 2010s leading into to this decade. My God, man. I mean, Brian Cox is a phenomenal actor. I think he is great in mostly everything that he does. This is the defining performance of his career. And it's because of the way he portrays this character and how he can seem very sympathetic and very fatherly and loving. And then the next moment rips it away. There's specifically a scene that comes to mind. Well, there's a lot of scenes that come to mind with Logan. One of my favorite ones is between him and his nephew, Greg. The four kids call him Cousin Greg, and he's kind of the guy nobody wants around. Greg is also a horrible person. He really just wants to climb up the corporate ladder, corporate chain. He doesn't care how he does it. He just wants to. And in this scene, Greg tells Logan, hey, my grandpa is planning to basically cut me off from my inheritance if I continue to work for you and continue to make a name for myself. And Logan, in his own, oh my God, in his own selfish way, even though his own brother is already beaten down into the hole, he wants to take one more thing from him. And Logan goes, Greg, I like you, Greg. I think you're absolutely swell. I think it's up to you, kiddo. You could, go, you could be with Uncle Fun or Grandpa Grumps. And, it's portrayed in the scene as Logan cares for Greg, but he doesn't. Logan just sees this as, okay, this is the last thing that my brother has, and he's clearly trying to keep it by saying, hey, don't work with Logan. And Logan goes, nah, I'm going to take this from you too. This is mine now. Thank you. And it's oh my God, dude. His character is such a jerk. And, we see these characters fight for the business that Logan builds. And the heartbreaking moments are well crafted and emotional. This is also one of those shows where you look at it and go, how could this possibly get any worse? And then you watch the next episode and it gets much worse. It's so much worse. But yeah, it was one of those shows when I watched it for the first time. I go back to the thing I said with Pirates of the Caribbean. It was like lightning in a bottle. And
yeah,
I loved it, especially because I knew nothing of what it was, and I just got to experience the story firsthand of what it was. And so when I got to its final season, I was emotionally ready, and it wrapped up in such a beautiful way that I was not expecting. It's the most perfect ending for the show that they had built. And so there's no other way to say it. It is perfect, and it is my third favorite show of all time. What's your number two, Brandon? What do we got?
My number two is arguably one of the least perfect shows that could make a top five, but it is the one of the most meaningful shows to me. And Carson, this will not take you by surprise whatsoever. I think you know what it is based on that prelude. It is Arrow.
Yeah,
you spoke about it earlier. Yep. It's my like I said, my top 5, other than maybe Beyblade, are all, and I guess maybe Sherlock to a degree. So I guess 3 of my top 5 are not going to shock you. My top 3 not going to shock you at all. They Arrow is such a phenomenal story, in my opinion. You're watching Oliver Queen. Stephen Amell does an unbelievably amazing job portraying a billionaire playboy, a vigilante, and portraying his growth throughout the series. You have Emily Richardson, or Emily Richards, who is Felicity Smoke. One of my favorite female characters in all of media. It is kind of like how you were talking about in Pirates of the Caribbean, where you were like, women, yay! Like, Felicity Smoke is one of those instances where you're watching, and there is, they very rarely play to the whole damsel in distress thing. Like, she is introduced as a strong female character in the sense of Oliver is like, I don't know how to use technology at all. And he goes to Felicity and is like, hey, I need your help, so like fixing my laptop. And he comes up with all these BS excuses because she just works for his dad's company, or I guess technically his company. Like, there's that whole like arc like about the ownership of the company, obviously. But it is the, hey, my laptop fell in some water while I was showering, or my laptop got shot with bullet. Like, there's this whole, like, I remember there is this scene where it's like, these are bullet holes. Like, she's like, what do you mean your laptop fell in some water? These are bullet holes. He's like, I don't know. Can you fix it? And then obviously he like ropes her in. You have my favorite character in the entire Arrow show. You have David Ramsey's character, Diggle, John Diggle. I think he is this story that they tell with his character, where he starts off as a bodyguard to Stephen Amell's character, being Green Arrow, and he doesn't know that he is Green Arrow. And Diggle is really frustrated with him in the beginning, and they have kind of that tumultuous like butting heads relationship of Oliver Queen, billionaire playboy, breaking off and basically trying to ditch Diggle. Diggle quits, gets replaced, and then Oliver realizes, hey, I need Diggle. Like, he's actually one of the few people that I can trust. And you're like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then later on in the series, Diggle goes through a whole story of not feeling like he's worth anything and feeling like he's weak. He gets injured and becomes a drug addict, and he hides that from the people closest to him. And then he has to go through a whole story where he kills his own brother. Like, Diggle's character goes through so much unbelievable growth, that it just, I love his character more than Oliver, mainly because of those types of things. But Oliver is obviously my second favorite. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, but he is my second favorite because his Lian Yu flat, like, the story is told for the first, I think if I remember correctly, it was the first 4-5 seasons, where half of each episode, or roughly half, was present day Oliver Queen being Green Arrow, being a vigilante. The other half of each episode was flashbacks to Lian Yu, his time on the deserted island that he was on. And it was such an interesting way of storytelling, where it's very similar. Like, his time on Lian Yu feels like a Lost episode. Like, Lost is another show that I really enjoy, where you go to this island, it like so much blows up. There's so many different strings. It goes everywhere, and it really kind of does feel like Lost to a way, but its own type of. I really like how they spend so much time doing flashbacks to Lian Yu, and not just, he was on this island for 5 years, we'll give you some flashbacks. Like, it does get a little absurdist at sometimes, where it's like, well, then he has the arc where he goes back to his family, but like they don't know it, and like it does get a little weird sometimes, especially as they introduce the more I guess magical elements of Lian Yu. But you're also introduced to some of the best characters in all of media, like Deathstroke. Deathstroke is a phenomenal villain who really, it is that very much dynamic of, you've done terrible things, but Oliver has to forgive him at points of the story because he needs him and he's the only one he can rely on. And he's not doing it because he's pure evil. He's doing it because he has a daughter and a family, like his daughter that he needs to support and loves. And it again humanizes him in a way that you feel for all the characters throughout the entire course. Now, you have some really weak seasons, you have some really weak episodes. I think it ends really interestingly with him becoming, I believe it's Spectre, with
Spectre,
yeah, Spectre, which isn't comic accurate, but it is a very interesting way to end the character. I do actually like that they ended his character, especially in that way, especially with how much buildup it has with the Crisis on Infinite Earths events, with the flashbacks and with all these different elements coming together. But yeah, I love Arrow. I'll say this one last thing before we move on. It is what solidified and really deep. The reason it's on this list, like full stop, honestly, is because Arrow is what made me the nerd I am today. I have seen Arrow more times than any other TV series. I have rewatched it start to finish probably like 7-8 times at this point. It was my not my introduction to nerddom, but it is what solidified that I love being a nerd. I want to be a nerd. Seeing these characters that are comic book characters portrayed on a CW. Yeah, it's the CW. Yeah, they have their campiness and whatever, but
sure,
it is really a dark, gritty story. Where you get to see Stephen Amell shirtless on a salmon ladder every few episodes, and it makes it all worth it. But yeah, it really solidified me wanting to be a nerd, I guess.
Sure.
That sounds weird, but like it makes sense to me.
No, I get that.
Yeah, that's my number 2.
No, I get it. Stephen Amell's abs would definitely make anybody a nerd for anything.
Just for that, it should have been my number 1. just for Stephen Amell's abs.
So my top 2, and I think Brandon, you'd understand this better than anybody. I go back and forth constantly on these. I think I've now over the past like few months have finally figured out exactly what order these two are in, but I've always gone back and forth with these two. So it breaks my heart that I have to rank them anyway, but here we are. My number 2 favorite show is Breaking Bad.
Number 2. Oh, I want to hear your number 1. I thought this was going to be number 1. I'm going to be honest with you. I know how much you love this show. Sorry to interrupt it. Like,
no, I know.
I'm so glad that we did not discuss our list whatsoever, because that is like my genuine like shock of this. I'm gonna just let you talk. Like, I am shook that is number 2.
Breaking Bad is perfect in every way. It has a clear-cut story from start to finish. Let's take the simple man, let's take the Mr. Chips character, as Vince Gilligan says, and let's turn him into Scarface. And how do we do that? And I think that the story is masterful. I think the relationships that the show builds over time are really good. I think that the ideas and choices that the show brings to life are very thought-provoking, and some of them can be shocking, some of them can be funny. And I think it was inspiring casting to cast Bryan Cranston as Walter White. We're talking about a man who for years played the dad on Malcolm in the Middle and played the dentist on Seinfeld. Two of the funniest sitcoms or comedy shows in general. And they put him in the middle of this incredible drama that took the world by storm. Nobody could have ever predicted that Breaking Bad would do as well as it did. And it when I mean it's perfect, I mean each season builds over time. And I think season 1 to season 5, each season gets better and better and better. And it leaves you on the edge of your seat. Walter White is one of the best anti-hero characters of all time. I think he's one of the best written protagonists of all time. And watching his journey become the worst human being ever is fascinating. Aaron Paul as Jesse Pinkman is the opposite of Walter White, which is let's take the wannabe Scarface person, and let's give him some heart. Let's give him this character arc that turns him into the person who I was this person. I just want to get out. That's all I want. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And
yeah,
Aaron Paul has some of the most emotional scenes, and it's gut wrenching. It's horrible, and the things that they do to his character. Oh my god! You think some of the things in Game of Thrones are bad? Some of the things that happen to Jesse Pinkman as a character are just awful. And then you have other characters in the show, like I mentioned from Better Call Saul. You have Mike Ehrmantraut, you have Saul Goodman, but you also have Walt's brother-in-law with Hank, who's this DEA agent who is playing a game of cat and mouse with his own brother-in-law, which he doesn't know.
yeah.
You have his wife Skylar, who all she wants is Walt out of her life so she can go back to some sense of normality. And the tragic thing about this show is when you look at their life, yeah, it wasn't perfect. They were down in the dumps more so. He was a high school teacher who originally could have been a really rich person in a business that he started and sold his share of, and they could have lived a very happy life, just the people that they are. But the moment Walt gets diagnosed with cancer, he decides, hey, I'm going to get some money saved up before I check out and before I die. I want to make sure that my family has something to remember me by, because he feels like he didn't have anything. And that choice right there, even though it starts off as this, I'm going to do this for my family, it quickly turns into, no, this is actually for me. I enjoy doing this. I'm good at this. I built this on my own. And it's watching that change happen. And it's, dude, I tip my hat off to Vince Gilligan, man. Writing that story could not have been easy. And I think every character, every line, every shot, every episode is so integral. Even in episodes like, have you ever heard of the episode called Fly, which is about a fly in the meth lab? It's the most filler episode as filler episodes go. But even that episode provides so much character nuance. It's so good. And I think that Vince Gilligan did a great job bringing that to life and bringing the story that he clearly had a passion for telling into the fold and bringing it to life. It hurts that I have to rank it at all, but that is my number 2 favorite show of all time. Brandon, number 1, drum roll, big reveal. Mic drop.
Oh no, I don't think anyone's gonna be able to guess this.
I don't think I know what it is.
I'm gonna keep this very brief for a few reasons. One, I have dinner plans actually coming up really soon. So I am gonna need to leave here in a minute, admittedly. But anyways, I'm just gonna come out and say it. It is One Piece. My number 1 favorite show of all time is One Piece. It's my favorite piece of media of all time. It's my favorite show of all time. It is a phenomenal character story. It is a phenomenal world building. It is an example of excellent storytelling, in the sense of, and you haven't gotten to this yet, this isn't really a big spoiler, but it kind of is. There are things that are set up all the way back in the first episodes that aren't called back to until 1,000 episodes later, but it makes sense in a way that no other author could ever accomplish whatsoever. I think the only thing that holds One Piece back from being even bigger than it is unfortunately the pacing of the anime. Again, I think I've mentioned this before. The only way I was able to watch it so quickly is because I would turn on, like, have some of the filler stuff running in the background in the sense of the slow drawn out scenes while I was doing like dishes or something like that, and then I'd sit down for the bigger like moments. But that didn't really feel like it removed any of the enjoyment of the episodes, because when One Piece hits, it hits higher than anything else will ever hit, in my opinion. You have characters that are pushed to their lowest lows, lower lows than like anyone else, in characters that have their highest highs. You are experiencing a life. You're experiencing these characters not just journey to become king of the pirates and to find the East Blue and all this. You're discovering things, again, even hundreds of episodes later, about these characters that make you go, oh my god, it makes so much sense why they are the way that they are. while also being like, oh my God, I can't wait to find out more, because we don't even know everything. They sets up mystery after mystery after mystery. Again, I talked about this earlier. We are in the final saga, or at least what is probably going to be the final saga of One Piece, and they're still asking more questions that I need answers to so bad.
Sure.
And
right. Yeah.
Talk about grandiose fights, the biggest stakes you've ever seen, characters that are written expertly. I mean, again, I know I said I'd keep this brief and I'm rambling, but I just love One Piece so much.
Right.
And I'll talk about it so much more on the podcast, so that's why I'll end it here to let Carson talk about his number one, so then I can also go out to dinner, because I can hear my friends texting me already. But yeah, that is my number one.
Yeah. So I've only ever gone back between two shows, so you probably know what show this is, Brandon. But it's The Sopranos.
Okay.
A show that...
Okay. I'm honestly saying it now. I still am a little surprised that Breaking Bad wasn't number one, but it makes sense. I know how much you love The Sopranos.
The Sopranos is, and what a lot of people say it. Rotten Tomatoes has ranked it one of the best show of all time. Rolling Stones has ranked it the best show of all time. And Breaking Bad's been very close to it. A lot of people have said that. What The Sopranos does that no other show does is it came out at a time and it was revolutionary because no show had ever been like it before. There was nothing to compare it to because it had never been done before. And not only that, like, you can have a show out of the gate, it tries something different, but it may not be the best. This show proves that it's the best through its characters, through its story, through the writing, and how much care and passion somebody put behind it. You want to talk about Game of Thrones subtle moments and building over time? My God, The Sopranos builds over time. it constantly is those slow character moments, and it's why when you build to big reveal moments, it is shocking, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, while at the same time it is beautiful, you know. I think the thing I love about this show, and I kind of compared, I said this earlier in the episode, the big draw of this show and what it does, it does no other show really has a comparison for, is you watch a man refuse to change it. And that's the whole point of Tony Soprano's character. He is a narcissistic, convoluted, anxiety-driven, self-driven, narcissistic personality who believes that everything is his, to own, to rule. How he wants it is how he gets it. And the show offers up the idea of, okay, no, Tony can change here. It'll give this little thing of like, here you go. It's like dangling keys in front of a cat. Here you go. Play with this. Here you go. And he may swipe at it. He may play with it a little bit, but ultimately he goes back to his old ways. And on top of that, it is a story about the mafia, which I love. And it's the story of a mafia during the time when the mafia is dying out. This is around the time that video surveillance became a much bigger thing. It's around the time that cell phones were becoming a thing, this and that, when it was a lot harder for the mafia to be able to do some of the things that they had done for years. You know, one of the first lines that Tony says in the show is how his dad had it great back in the old days, and how he always felt like he was coming in at the end of it. All the good things are gone. And I think James Gandolfini is the best. I said Walter White was one of the best anti-heroes of all time. Tony Soprano is the best anti-hero of all time. Watching James Gandolfini take on this role, which obviously is his magnum opus, watching him take on this role, take on this character, and do it so naturally and so well, and while at the same time, you root for this character even though you shouldn't. You really should not root for this guy at all. He does a great job, and he has one of the best performances I think ever, maybe the best performance of all time. Depending on I don't know who you are as a person will determine who the best performances of all time, but
yeah.
no, there's nothing really I can say beyond the show's perfect. And I'm currently rewatching it now, so there's probably a good chance within the next few weeks, stay tuned, I will be talking about this show more in depth and full out. It's a show I hope you eventually do watch one day, so I won't spoil too much of it.
I mean, hey, we have a segment on this show for that exact same purpose. If you want to select, I mean, I'm going to finish. I mean, if we switch you over to One Piece, you might actually catch up to me in terms of finishing One Piece before Game of Thrones. But I definitely have. I definitely will get through Game of Thrones eventually, and then if that's what you want your second one to be, maybe it is. But we'll talk about that when we get there.
No, I want this next thing to be the 50 Shades series. Actually, I need you to watch those in depth. I want you to take intricate notes. No, but wrapping it together, I love The Sopranos. I think it's perfect. I think it has some of the best that TV has to offer. I think it is the best that TV has to offer. And I think that if you are just somebody who loves television or loves movies, it's something that you absolutely need to watch because it's jaw dropping. It's incredible. But with that being said, Brandon's any final thoughts before we end this episode?
I mean, our last segment is what are you looking forward to? What are you excited for? I think the only thing that we haven't already talked about that I'm really excited for is just next week is the final episode of Solo Leveling. Unfortunately, since we'll be recording this podcast on a Friday again, I won't be able to talk about the final episode of Solo Leveling on the next episode. It'll have to wait for the episode after that.
Sure.
Again, just filming things, scheduling. But yeah, that's the main thing I'm excited for that we haven't spoken about because obviously there's many things to look forward to. I might go see a movie tomorrow after I do my taxes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Anything you're looking forward to?
Obviously, within about a week and a half to 2 weeks, we get Thunderbolts, which I'm really excited for.
Yeah.
We're right there. We're really close. Or a month, not a few weeks. It's like a month, but still.
I was gonna say it's not a few weeks. It's May, right?
It's May 2nd. It seems closer than it actually is. But we're getting Thunderbolts pretty soon here, so I'm excited for that. We get a new episode of Daredevil.
I mean, we're at the end of March, so
we get a new episode of Daredevil Born Again next week. And honestly, they just announced that Invincible season 4 is coming out next year, at the start of next year. So that is definitely something we can look forward to. I know you and I said we were going to try to watch Last of Us before season 2 of Last of Us comes out at some point.
Yes, once I finish Reincarnated as a slime, which I'm about halfway through, I think the next thing I add in will be Last of Us, just so that I can finish it in time for The Last of Us Season 2, since I admittedly have not seen the Season 1. Not for any particular reason, it's just, as you see, I watch a lot, and there's only so much time in every day. But yeah,
Well, good. Look, man, great episode. I'm excited. I loved talking to you today. Guys, this concludes another episode of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast. If you like what you heard, if you like what you saw, give us a like, give us a follow. We're on all social media platforms. We're also on almost all of the podcasting platforms, including YouTube, Amazon, Apple Music, Spotify. You name it, we're probably on there.
Yeah, literally.
But no, guys, seriously, thank you so much for watching. It's a pleasure getting to do this every week. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carson Kreitner, aka Juggernaut, with my very good friend
Brandon, aka Parrotfish.
And this is me saying, stay nerdy.